All right, it looks like we are rolling here, so we can finally get things started. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to the Xbox Roundtable Podcast. This is show number 302, the place on Sunday nights for Xbox talk and much more from around the game industry. Naturally, I'm Invader, your host for the evening, and I am very, very happy to have you all here with us. I mean, win, don't die, right? Win, don't die. I'm sorry about the sudden cancellation, just to start off tonight, of last week's show. I had everything prepped and ready to go, and guess what? My furnace just kind of went out a few hours before the show. And yeah, I had to just kind of shift gears there, right? It was pretty cold that night, actually, for a few days for that matter. So I had to focus on that, understandably. Thankfully, I didn't have to replace the unit or anything like that. Just a short circuit, so a simple fix, thankfully. But yeah, that's where my focus was last Sunday night, and now we can finally cover all the news from the past week or so, or I guess 2 weeks. Anyways, for this one, we're going to discuss the Xbox business update that happened last week. Or, sorry, not last week, but, well, a week or so ago, week and a half. And Xbox gave us an update on their vision for, well, the Xbox division going forward, with some interesting new hardware teases and plenty more. Now, first off, I will introduce everyone, starting off with, going down the list here, Grimes. Grimes, how you been?
Yeah, what's going on? First of all, I'm glad that, your issue wasn't a big deal or bigger than what it was.
You're telling
So,
me.
yeah, so yeah, good to hear and good to hear you guys were safe. But hope everyone else had a good weekend. I'm doing well. What a pleasant surprise with Dead Island 2 silent dropping onto Game Pass out of nowhere the other day. So that's what I've been playing. It's a much improved game over the first Dead Island. It pretty much feels like a Jason Statham zombie flick, over the top action and dialogue. However, I do feel like Dead Island 2 has slightly overshadowed Tales of Arise with its drop, as that was probably going to be my next game after Brotato and Persona 3. But now it's like I've pushed it down the order. And I'm also looking forward to Diablo 4 when it hits Game Pass very soon. But yeah.
All right. All right, that's fair. Yeah, kind of a surprise, last minute surprise there. And a lot of people were like, oh, Dead Island's dropping onto Game Pass, and lo and behold, Dead Island 2 right there. So a lot of people were excited to check that out recently. I might get on that sometime soon. I did enjoy the first Dead Island, but man, that was years ago. That was years. Let's see, moving on down the list. Centurion, hey, great to see you popping in as per usual. How's things?
Things are great. I'm just playing some games and just same old, I guess you could say, at least for me. I mean, my life hasn't changed at all.
Nice, nice. By the way, great video the other day. Everybody check out Centurion's latest video. Lots of passion there, for sure.
Uh, I guess you could say that was, you know what? I take that back. Yeah, that was I don't want to say it was life changing, but definitely, I guess, kind of freeing in the fact that,
Hmm.
some things were said that I'm pretty sure yeah, you get it.
I get it, I get it. And guys, definitely check out his channel, check out his video. I think a lot of things were pretty well said. All right, moving on down here. Oh, I saw him sneak in there. General MLD. What's up, brother?
Hey, yeah, doing pretty good this week. I basically I hopped on the Dead Island bandwagon here. I saw that part two was out on the Game Pass, and I actually never played this series before. And I guess it's just part of their marketing push. Dead Island One and Riptide were for $2.99 on the Xbox store. So I'm playing through Dead Island One right now, and I'm gonna go all the way to Dead Island Two, all back to back. So looking
Dead
forward to that.
Island 2 is way better done than Dead Island 1. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that to diss Dead Island 1. It was just so many people thought because of all the delays and developer hell that they went through creating Dead Island 2 was going to lead to like some kind of crap game. And
Right.
dude, like Dead Island 2 is definitely
Yeah.
definitely does the first game's justice for sure.
That's fantastic because I'm having a great time with Dead Island 1 here. So yeah, it's a good feeling. Like you overlooked something, right? But now that all these years later, you can just play all these games back to back like that. So I'm having a great time over here so far.
All right, happy to hear that, MLD. Discovering some new things, and I didn't even know about the sale on the other Dead Island games. Very interesting. Is that still going on? Do you know?
I can check real quick, but I think it was because of the whole Dead Island 2 is going to Steam, and I think it was just some kind of all-encompassing marketing push to get awareness on the IP. I'll check right now. I'll get back to you.
Sure, sounds good. Moving on down, Crusader, what's up?
Oh, nothing much. It's been a couple good weeks in gaming for me. I played one of a couple of the coolest games I've ever played. Actually, I played Nier Automata, which everyone in this chat is except for Dots, who has already seen the whole thing, should go out and play. Excellent game. Absolutely excellent from the music and everything, and it has like multiple routes, which 5 of them are actually like core, and they call it like replaying the game, but you're not really replaying the game. You play the game as like from the perspective of a different character with totally different abilities, and then you play like something after that. It's so good, and I think it might still be on sale on Xbox. I was gonna pitch it to everyone last week, but since we weren't on, I didn't get the chance, and I think it's still on sale as of today, because it was like 14 days last I looked, which I think it should be a day or two left. And then I picked up Banishers Ghosts of New Eden, which I believe Sent you are also playing.
Yes.
That game is excellent.
Now, did you pick it up day one, or did you wait?
I picked it up. I picked it up day one, but I didn't start till a couple days later.
Yeah,
because I had some other stuff going on.
I pre-ordered it because I keep up with ACG, who obviously got.
Yeah, and he said buy on it, right? It was just straight up a buy. Yeah.
His only complaint was, when you're like the lip syncing for the acting isn't exactly like 100%, but he was like,
yeah, because it's French.
Complaint.
I'm pretty sure it was made by Dontnod's French studio.
Yeah.
So like it's synced to the French dialogue, I believe.
But when I heard about the upgrade mechanics and how your decisions like right now I just got off of someone's island and I'm starting to see what one of my consequences are of the decision I made between the 2 people that run the town.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm just starting to see the consequences of that decision, and definitely there's a lot of choice in the game, and also it really makes you think, especially with the main premise of the game being to choose to give up your oath.
Yeah, that's the best way to not spoil. Yeah, it's so good. It is. I consider it a must-play game. Like straight up, I finished it. It is the first new IP in a long time where when I'd wake up in the morning and the whole day while I'm at work, the only thing I can really think about is getting home to play it. Like that is how good it was. It plays kind of like God of War or The Witcher, like The Witcher 3. But has like RPG elements like a BioWare game, and like the dialogue and characters and themes of Dontnod's games like Life is Strange. Like it is so good. It's not I wouldn't call it highly original. Except for its setting. Its setting is highly original. Its gameplay mechanics and how it works is not highly original, but it works so well. They took all of these pieces, mashed them together, and made it work so well.
It takes place in New England, which is essentially North America during the period of time where settlers were just coming over here and creating the colonies.
Yeah.
And I think the last time a game that really focused on that area, I think was like Assassin's Creed 3.
Assassin's Creed 3 did. There's definitely one other I can't think of. But yeah, like it is so good.
But for me, a game that came to mind was what is it? Jedi Survivor or Jedi Fallen Order.
Yeah.
On the idea of
I could see that too.
Well, I'm not saying like it's like a Souls game, because I mean definitely the game is depending on the difficulty you play on.
Yeah,
right.
Depending on the difficulty, you could play it like one.
But I like the fact that all of a sudden you gain an ability, because the game, if you come up against a roadblock or something you don't have the ability to get by, it'll create a map icon. And it'll just straight up tell you, like, you don't have the ability to do this.
To go through here. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you
in that way.
And you unlock the ability, and all of a sudden now you find yourself like, oh crap, now I got to go back and find that, because now I have the ability to unlock it. And it definitely does give you the incentive to not just like play the game from A to Z and not go back and do anything that you forgot.
You also have to go back to places for story reasons, so they kind of do push you back through areas a little bit in order to do stuff, especially with side quests. And like it's so good. I recommend everyone pick up and play it. It's probably in my top 10 games. It is that good.
I'll have to check it out then. Interesting.
Yeah. And Tales of Arise, I actually started playing that over the weekend. I'm on a JRPG binge with Nier and that, and it was between that and Final Fantasy 15 Royal Edition that I was gonna pick up and play. But yeah, Tales of Arise is really good. I don't have much to say about that because I'm not done with it, but it's pretty good.
Nice. I've been on a bit of a boomer shooter binge over the past few months, but
so you must be excited for Bolt Gun then, because that's coming to Game Pass.
I
already played it.
Actually,
you already played it.
I
already beat it.
Already have it. Actually, I've been I hadn't beat it yet. I played it right before I jumped on the show. I'd started off and then things kind of happened, and finally got back into it. So I'm just over halfway through it, and yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. I'm trying to get out some guides before it comes out on Game Pass. I'll just put it like that, but we'll see timeline wise. But I've been burning through it like crazy. It's a lot of fun. Hard to believe that it ties into the Space Marine games in a weird way.
Oh, does it really?
So well,
canon.
You're not thinking of it like that, but yeah, it does. Okay. It does bring them up.
It's technically a sequel from the first Space Marine game.
Technically, it's completely different genres and takes. Like,
sure.
It's interesting. Yeah. Let's see. Moving on down the list. Shockley. Hey, Eric. How you been?
Good.
Oh, Shock, you're not coming through real well.
I'm not.
Oh,
Can
there you are.
Now
There you are.
Now you are.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've just been getting back into Resident Evil 4. I forget what happened. I think Diablo happened around the time when I was like halfway through it. So I think I stopped it, so I'm getting back in and finishing it. Game's really good at making you feel like you have no resources. And just giving you enough that like once you take down all the enemies, it's like I had like a couple bullets left. But then you get, it just has that perfect like, hey, we'll give you some more resources like right at the end, and like here's a few more to kind of replenish you, but you feel like you're just barely having bullets left as you go into the next encounter. But yeah, that one's pretty intense. They've definitely nailed like the first entry, and I think it seems way more horror than I remember. Like obviously the original being more like kind of actiony as it got like deep into the game. So I think I'm probably at least over halfway through it for sure. But yeah, just getting back into that and trying to mix that in with the Persona 3 Reload. But yeah, hopefully.
Did you try that Silent Hill game?
No, I didn't get a chance. I haven't turned on my PS5 in forever, so I have not. I need to hook it back up, but with my setup, I just hadn't done it yet. But maybe I will here soon. So give that a run. But yeah, that's what I've been playing so far. But yeah, I'm just having a blast bouncing between that and Persona 3 Reload and trying to get some gaming in. So usually do Persona when I can do like some cloud, and latency is an issue or fidelity is not a high point. But yeah.
All right, good to know. And finally, who do we got here? Dots, how you been, man?
I've been doing good. Yeah, a lot of not playing Halo 3 ODST and playing another game where you fall from space and kill aliens with reckless abandon. I have been dumping so many hours into Helldivers 2. It is actually funny. I have been enjoying the game profusely. Once again, one of those games that comes out and like shuts down the AAA standard by giving us something that's just a bunch of my favorite way to describe Helldivers 2 for the very few people who probably don't already know is you give up to 1 to 4 idiots the entire US military budget, point them at a planet and tell them to go kill everything there. And then like add like the most over patriotic like mentality to the mixture, and that's Helldivers 2. Like it is so much fun.
Gotta fight for that managed democracy, right?
Managed democracy, liberty, the power of your vote, they'll mention sometimes. When you take damage, you'll just scream out, "Sweet liberty, my leg!" So like just silly shit like that. But it's been a blast.
Troopers.
It is literally, since this game has come out, Starship Troopers has shown up on my like YouTube recommended for like watching clips of that, and I think that has been a universal standard for a lot of people right now. Like the popularity of Starship Troopers has gone up again because this game is literally just that.
Fantastic movie. I'm doing my part.
That's
Do you know that Starship Troopers, the movie, is like entirely different in tone from the book?
Yes.
Because like everything in the movie that's being satirized is super serious in the book.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I don't know. I like the way the movie was done. Like
the movie's great.
I haven't read the book to be honest, but I love the film. The film is just like it can go cheese, but like it just all around it's entertaining and it does a good job. That's another reason why I'm very curious about Helldivers 2. Like my birthday's coming up in about a month or so. I don't know. I kind of want to check it out, so I'll probably bite the bullet on that. Plus, it's not like a full price game either, which is kind of nice.
Yep.
So yeah, I could probably bite the bullet on that one. Yeah. But
but
so people can get into the game now.
Yes, now that the server now, even though the server capacity is up to 700,000 now, they have still hit that limit. But I think the bigger issue was that now there's an AFK kick timer. So if you're AFK in your like spaceship for 15 minutes, it will kick you.
Dude, the stuff I heard about the AFK on that game was absolute bullshit. I was like, oh my god, I'd go insane if I knew that was what people were doing.
Yeah, well, that has been fixed. The devs have been working hard. Honestly, my favorite bit of news that's come out of Helldivers 2 being so popular is that there are more players on Helldivers 1 than there is on the Suicide Squad game.
Yep.
Oh yeah, that game.
Suicide Squad had a peak of like 600 the other day.
Ooh.
That's really bad for live
and like
service
Helldivers 1 was like at 800, 900 that same day. Because people were probably playing Helldivers 1 waiting to get into the Helldivers 2 queues.
It's really weird because
they're past the time.
It's really weird because they're completely different genres of games. Like the tone is the same, but like
twin stick
Helldivers 1's a twin stick shooter. Yeah,
that's correct.
Apparently, though, I didn't know this because I never played the first one. The DDR like directional call-ins are the exact same between the two games.
Yes, they are.
So like, there's a call-in that's like, call in a reinforcement. One of your friends die, you get to use up an extra life. You have to call them back in for another drop pod. Apparently, the combinations is the exact same between the two of them. So people who played the first game are like, "Oh, I know the exact button combination."
All right. All right. I have to look more into that, but good to know. Good to know their dots. Guys, you know the drill. Very quick reminder to, if you could kindly hit the like button and, of course, share out the show, as it does help us out immensely with those pesky algorithms and such. So please share it out, give a like, and so on and so forth. But yeah, guys, let's go down to the main event. About, like a week and a half ago or so, key Xbox higher-ups appeared on the official Xbox podcast and shared with us, I guess the company's vision for Xbox for the upcoming future, stating a few things, such as plans to bring 4 games to other platforms. I believe we know which ones those are now, while not changing their exclusivity strategy, as they were saying. And on top of it all, there was even some new hardware teases to relieve a lot of people on that. Now, I know everyone here wants to get in on this, as I certainly value everybody's perspective on the matter. There's definitely a lot to say. I will lead off with Grimes, and then go over to General MLD, and then Centurion. Grimes.
I'll give you one easy. I'll go last.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Well, anyway, we'll start off with Grimes and go to MLD, and then we'll go off from there. Grimes, what did you think of the Xbox business event? Like, did you think that they did a good job at communicating things? Did anything catch your eye in particular? Please, share with us your thoughts.
For sure. I'm personally okay with Microsoft releasing some of the games to other platforms, as long as they keep having exclusives in some shape or form. As long as games like Gears of War and Halo remain on Xbox and PC, I'm completely fine. First and foremost, we all know this is a Microsoft decision. It's not an Xbox decision, but I can understand why do it. I also love all those 4 games that are going multiplat. Like, I love Sea of Thieves. I love Pentiment. Pentiment is one of my favorite games. Hi-Fi Rush is so fun. And Grounded, they're all really good games. But am I ever gonna play them again? Probably not. So why not let other people experience those great games? With Sea of Thieves, that game can only grow so much. It's most likely reached the most it can from Steam and Xbox. Average gamers like me, or like average Sea of Thieves players like me, jump in for a few hours here and there when there's something new added to the game, and then not touch it ever again. I used to play with a group of friends, but then they stopped and had that solo update come out a few years earlier. Maybe I would still be playing it, but it came several years too late. So it's time for other people to experience that game. And from what I've seen on Twitter, quite a few PlayStation players are excited to jump on Sea of Thieves. I'm a bit surprised that Hi-Fi Rush didn't get announced for the Switch, for example. It's not really heavy in graphics. Doesn't have ray tracing, really high-res graphics. So it's not really that heavy on CPU. So I don't know why it wasn't announced. Maybe they're waiting for the Switch too. But I'm happy other players are gonna experience it. And And going back to what I said earlier about exclusive, I can't tell you what's gonna happen in like 5 to 10 years, but in my opinion, I think Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo will always have some sort of exclusives. However, all three will start releasing some first-party software on competing platforms. Everyone knows the console market isn't growing. It just remains the same amount of gamers worldwide. I think there are probably around 800 million console gamers worldwide, and it just remains the same number always.
Well, I mean, you do a bit of game development. You would know, like, the costs for games have just skyrocketed over the years, right?
But you know, it's like software like Maya, for example, the cost of fortune. And usually, what the way studios work is per seat. So you get one license per seat. So obviously, if you've got like hundreds of animators working with Maya, so there are studios that are switching to software like Blender, which is open source, so it's free, and that will cut down on a lot of development costs. But then you know, and you can also use Unreal and Unity for free. But if you hit a certain amount, if you have $1 million in profit, that's when you have to pay for Unreal, for example. But anyway, so a lot of these things add to the cost of development. Plus, you know, like, let's 343, for example, they have hundreds and hundreds of developers with massive salaries. But if you cut down the cost of software, maybe things can even out. But anyway, I digress. You know, and you know, if you're someone like me that has 400 games installed on Xbox, the chances of me switching to PlayStation are low. Sure, there are plenty of gamers that have both consoles, like Crusader. Crusader has, yeah. I think you have all three, correct?
I have all three. I also have two gaming rigs. One's a desktop, one's a portable laptop.
Yeah. So, but you know, like, yeah,
Even
that's
had a Raspberry Pi back in high school.
That's true.
Those are great for, you know, for retro gaming, the Raspberry Pis. But you know, like most people just remain on one console. They're not gonna switch to a second console just for 2 or 3 exclusives per year. And you know, let's say, for example, Microsoft decides to it's Xbox is no more. They stopped making hardware, which I know is everyone's fear, especially at least from 2 weeks ago. Everyone feared the worst. If I were to become a third-party publisher, I wouldn't get a PlayStation. I would just stick to I would just play on my computer. So how does Sony get money from me? By releasing more games on Windows or on Xbox. Which, you know, obviously I just said Xbox, you know, if Xbox was to stop making hardware, obviously they can release on Xbox, but they can release on Windows. But as we saw 2 weeks ago, Microsoft has said that they're committed to making hardware. So they ain't going nowhere. I think the big testing ground for Sony will be Bungie when they release Marathon on Xbox. we've seen like obviously MLB The Show is on Xbox. It's a PlayStation game, but they were forced to release that game on Xbox. But also, a game like MLB is probably not that big outside of the US and Japan with gamers. So it's probably not a good example for Sony to see,
Did you see that it has 6 times the gamers on Xbox than it does on PlayStation because of Game Pass?
Oh wow, no, I didn't. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Interesting stat.
Based on some metrics from not trophy, True Trophies.
I mean, listen, I don't care about baseball, but when it first launched on the on Game Pass a few years ago, I did try it and I enjoyed it. So I'm sure there are many people like me trying it for the first time. But that's great. I didn't know that, and that's
I can link
amazing.
an article in our private chat.
And and then Nintendo will most likely be the last one to adopt a multiplat strategy from Sony and Xbox, because most of our player base don't care about graphics, 4K ray tracing, or whatever new tech is available. Release an average Pokemon game, they'll still buy it. Release Mario Kart 8 for the 4th or 5th time, they'll buy it. A new Zelda game or a Mario game, and Nintendo players are happy. So Nintendo doesn't have, they're not in a rush to release on multiplat whenever that happens. But maybe I can see them doing a cloud deal with a company that specializes in that, maybe with NVIDIA in the future. And then regarding to new hardware, which was teased by Sarah Bond, it most definitely screams of AI integration, which is going to be 100% AI heavy with Copilot. Also, Microsoft announced recently a collaboration with Intel in making chips for Microsoft. I don't know what that means for Xbox, if it means anything at all. So we shall see. I personally prefer AMD because I've had bad experiences with Intel in the past, but who knows what happened in the future with Intel and Microsoft.
That could be some ML stuff too with XeSS, which is Intel's version of DLSS, the NVIDIA upscaler.
Yeah, could be.
So like that could actually be big if that was a console thing.
You're more of a technical guy than I am, so you probably understand better. Yeah. But,
I can talk about that a little bit when I go later.
And then what if this leap in technology also allows you to easily swap components in the next console, like a plug and play sort of system? But again, AI will most definitely going to be the main focus of whatever of the next console. And then there are obviously the rumors, constant rumors of an Xbox handheld. I would love to see an Xbox handheld. However, Microsoft has a tendency to increase prices of their own products when a partner has a similar device in order not to upset them. So if Microsoft ever releases a handheld gaming device, it will most likely be more expensive than the Asus or the Lenovo handhelds. But yeah, I would love to see one, even though I don't travel as much as I used to before, so it probably wouldn't do much use to me at the moment, but it's a great device, and would love to see it.
Do you think they'd do a handheld PC or a handheld console? Because those are both very different concepts. Because I don't see them doing a handheld PC.
Well,
Because I agree that if they did a handheld PC, it would be more expensive.
interesting.
Handheld console would be probably cheaper because
Yeah.
one, they'll be selling it at a loss to begin with, and two,
You're right.
they can make money off of this. They'd be the only storefront. They'd be making money off of it that way.
Maybe that's what they do in order not to
Yeah.
upset their partners. Maybe you're right.
Because they could make Windows 11 have a nice mobile UI
Yeah,
and let their OEMs do the mobile PCs, and they
Yeah.
can do a handheld console that syncs with the consoles. I think that's more likely personally, because they're
Yeah.
the only ones that can make a handheld Xbox. Anyone can make a handheld Windows PC.
exactly. So I think you're spot on. I think that's what's gonna happen. Because otherwise it's gonna be eight
It would
or
be expensive.
900.
Yeah. A handheld console could be the same price as the Series X,
Yeah.
or cheaper even.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. We'll see. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Would love to hear what you guys, if you guys agree with any of the points or what you guys want to add. But
I mean, actually, you brought up some interesting stuff. I mean, to be honest, I wasn't really thinking about the AI aspect of it with the new hardware, but that does kind of make some sense and get some ideas flowing in my head. So I have to research that one a bit more for sure. And I did see that, yeah, they have partnered with Intel, which is quite interesting because they've been pretty chummy with AMD the past little while. You know, with the whole like, exclusive games going to, again, other platforms, other consoles, like, I know that there's a variety of like opinions here. I will say, for me though, how I am interpreting things is that, to me, the dam isn't bursting with every game in their library going forward with multi-platform. To me, I still think it'll just be particular games and particular examples. I mean, look at Ori and the Blind Forest, for example. I mean, that happened a couple of years ago, and yeah, I mean, people were worried at the time that, again, Ori's going to, Nintendo Switch and so on. It's going to lead to other games. And again, that was what, 2017, 2018? Like, the dam never busted or anything like that. So, again, I just think, me personally, just judging from what they're saying for the time being, I think it'll just be certain examples for certain games, but again, time will tell, but that's just me. General MLD, why don't we go over to you? I know you got some thoughts on this. I don't know, what do you think? Do you agree with what Grind's been saying? Please share with us your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. I think the business update was necessary to, calm the flames, but some uncertainty still lingers within the community, and I can't fault him for that. But I'll get into that in a bit. I'm fine with the smaller games going multi-platform, as well as the live service games especially. These are games that faded into the background. They're not system sellers, at least not anymore, and they could breathe new life into the games themselves, which I do like that idea. Especially say Sea of Thieves. I really enjoyed that game, and now that game can go a little bit more with the PlayStation user base injecting that. And even I think Nintendo will be good for Hi-Fi Rush. Obviously not Switch, but I do believe the rumors that the next Switch successor will get Hi-Fi Rush. And of course, it'll also do good on PS5 as well, I hope. Pentiment, that's a wild card because it's very, very niche, although I did enjoy it. I think these 4 games are very specially curated. Oh yeah, and Grounded, of course, being a other live service game to a degree. I think Xbox are trying to test the waters with these small games. Each one is actually unique in its own right. So they're going to look at the sales of these things, how relevant they stay on other platforms, and just use that as a metric for the future. So how well these games sell will determine what other games come in the coming years.
So we
What-
have some statistics, by the way, on that already.
Sure. Okay.
Hi-Fi Rush is currently in the top 10 best-selling on PlayStation.
Oh wow, that's great.
And that
Okay.
includes multiple SKUs. We tried to get the metrics by taking out bundles, but the problem with taking out bundles is right now every version of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is counted as a bundle because if you pre-order it, it actually includes remake, which is wild. But like every pre-order, so like those count as bundles, so we couldn't take it out. So if you look on my feed, you'll see it's actually in the top 5 without bundles. With bundles, it's either in like the top 10 or the top 15. But when you have the bundles and shit in, it includes like a ton of multiple SKUs of the same game.
That's fine.
So it's doing really well on PlayStation in pre-orders.
Okay.
But like flatly, it is doing really well.
Yeah, kind of funny how this game was unwanted a year ago, but here we are. But
Yeah.
I can see the plan though. People have speculated, and I agree with this. Is that if Xbox would essentially give these games to PlayStation and the Switch successor, Hi-Fi Rush, and based on how well they do, they'll make a sequel, and the sequel will at least at launch be on Xbox ecosystem exclusive, and that will kind of make people kind of like, it'll come to my thing eventually, but do I want to wait a year? The reviews are so good, everyone's hyped about it. Am I really gonna wait a year? I think that's the hope, and in that regard, a lot of gamers are impatient. They live in the moment. If a game is hyped, if everyone's talking about it, they don't want to be left out. So I can see this strategy paying off for Xbox, like especially with the single A and double A games, just really gaining interest. Especially like Hi-Fi Rush would do well in say Japan on the Switch, or again Switch successor. I keep saying that, but yeah, you guys get what I mean. So I'm actually okay with this. Again, smaller games, older games like Sea of Thieves that were from the Xbox One gen. Hell, if they do games like Sunset Overdrive or Rise Son of Rome, I mean, these games are like 10-year-plus games. I don't care. If the Xbox can get the whole point of this is I'm seeing the bigger picture here. Is the more money Xbox brings in is more money that can sustain the brand and be reinvested into us. So Game Pass deals, exclusive deals, publishing deals. These are all funded by various things, this being one of them. So it all depends on what they pick. Now, going off that, like the gaming industry, it's just more volatile than ever. I mean, we've all seen the layoffs across the board, everywhere, big and small companies. So the reality is that the industry is just heading a certain direction with costs just ballooning, and I gotta be a realist here. If whatever Xbox has to do, because they own a lot of studios now, they own 2 publishers, they own many internal studios themselves as well. Their overhead, their payroll is enormous, so they do have to get costs under control and also make more profit. So this kind of has to be one of the things they have to do. Now, again, but going off that, saying Indiana and Starfield were staying off of PlayStation, we need to hear that, because I hope Xbox executives see the value in the AAA games staying exclusive to Xbox at least for multiple years, at the very, very least. Because you do want people driven to your platform first, because you could make 70% off of PlayStation, but you'll make 100% off of yourself. So, and I hope they see that, because they'll be system sellers. They'll drive Game Pass subscribers, and games like Indiana, they will most definitely help Xbox and bring more awareness to Xbox if it stays exclusive for the foreseeable future. And same with Starfield. It's going to be growing and added content for multiple years to come. I'm sure we'll get a Skyrim-style definitive edition in the coming years, where it'll be ultra polished, the DLC will be included, and all that stuff. I would like it to be also exclusive to Xbox, to get second wind on the platform, bring people back in. So, at least for now, good news. They see the value in the big games staying with Xbox. But there is, however, the lingering concern that nothing is truly off limits. Because I mean, I'm on X. I see the PlayStation fans and the narratives they try to push. By the time the June showcase comes along, and we're gonna get so many announcements because look how much Xbox owns, right? They're gonna pivot the conversation, and people are gonna go along with it because they just do. Oh, these games are gonna come to PlayStation eventually. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but someday. And that will be the narrative. And it sucks that Xbox wasn't clear on any specific rules and criteria. It's just, these are the 4 games, but no promises afterwards. And I'm like, you could have been a bit more clear. I get it, you're testing the waters with these 4 games, but we just have to know that some things are off limits, like Halo, Gears, Forza. Like I would lose my cool if those went to PlayStation.
Personally, MLD, I think like a lot of those, like again, I think the actual ones that are the identity of Xbox, I don't think they're going to be going multi-platform. That's just me personally. But you might see again some games that, I don't know, maybe they think that they can make some extra money of because, you know, they weren't exactly blockbusters back in the day, but maybe they want to see how they'll do out in the wild on other systems. Like, for example, you know, take a title like Recore, right? It's something that didn't light the world on fire and had, well, issues at launch, right? And I could see something like that get a second life if it was put on, let's say, the Nintendo Switch, because it seems like something that would appeal to that crowd. But I'm just giving an example that's a hypothetical, I don't know. But it's something in their back catalog, for example, that I think that, again, they could float out there. What do you think?
Oh, definitely. I think they can easily take a page out of Nintendo's book, where they brought a lot of Wii U games that were great, but because it was on the Wii U, it didn't sell. Or they even got games from the GameCube, which was at the time the lowest selling game of the console of the generation, and they're remastering those games Switch. Like the original Metroid Prime. That game only sold maybe, off the top of my head, 2 million on the GameCube, which is criminally low for the quality of the game at the time. But now on Switch, it's gained a fresh set of eyes from millions of new gamers. So I was happy to see that happen, because that was a personal favorite of mine back in the day on the GameCube. So Xbox can easily take this strategy and look at some Xbox One games, even some 360 games. I don't care. I mean, again, these games are so old that Xbox fans shouldn't really care about this. But again, the IP does matter. Old Gears games, old Halo games, they should be off limits. Because again, like, because there is the concern that if Microsoft is pulling the strings, Microsoft executives, I don't think they'll care if it's Halo, Gears, or Forza, or smaller games. But I do think that maybe the fan outcry online maybe helped, if anything, to show that there should be a line in the sand and that Xbox still needs an identity. And although Satya Nadella says he doesn't like the idea of exclusives, he does recognize that the competition still does exclusives, and therefore Xbox has to play that game until the industry as a whole has adapted and moved on over the years, if that were to be the case.
Arguably, someone like Satya Nadella would want Halo, Forza, and Gears to be everywhere rather than being on Xbox. Like,
exactly.
Arguably, those would be the games that they would rather be moved, not the little shit, right? Because look at what they did. Like, Microsoft 365 is like the non-gaming equivalent software to like the Windows platform, right? But 365 is literally everywhere. You can load it up in any web browser. You can pull it up in your phone if you have a subscription, right?
Right.
And like that's what they want, which isn't in principle at a high level a bad thing.
Yeah.
But
so again, because they weren't clear at the business update, there is still that lingering concern, and of course haters will amplify that, and so that's not going to be pleasant for the coming years ahead unless Xbox makes it more clear, but I guess time will tell. At the very least, Indiana Jones and Starfield not coming, it does have a good sign that at least for years these games will be exclusive to Xbox. So there's that. So overall, I'm pretty much okay with the business update in that regard. Diablo 4 coming to Game Pass. That's a nice start. I'll certainly play that because, well, through all the FTC regular trials and stuff, I knew the catalog would come to Xbox eventually, so I held off on playing games like Diablo 4. So I feel like my patience will literally pay off. I'll play like the game with all the updates and content and bug fixes. So I'm looking forward to that. But again, it's a shame that they weren't more clear on the back catalog timeline. I did like that they said that all future games will be day one, which would also include Call of Duty, which is amazing news, because that was also one of the rumors that Call of Duty would be the exception to the day one rule, but at least they shut that one down real quick.
In
Happy
an
about
interview,
that.
Phil even name dropped it later, by the way.
Perfect.
That
See-
I still wouldn't be dead set that it happens this year, though, mind you, because we don't know the terms of the existing deal and like exactly when they can legally do it.
Oh,
Does
'cause
that
of
make
Sony's
sense?
thing?
Just be,
Sony's
just be.
contract?
So it's supposed to be over with the last one, but in court they said something along the lines of they couldn't do it until 2025 at one point, but they've never reiterated that anywhere else. So it could have even just been a typo in that statement. And they meant to put 2024 because that happens a lot in court documents, and they adjust it later, and we just never saw the adjustment.
Okay,
But
so worst case scenario, it's next year's Call
yeah,
of Duty, but at
right.
least it'll be day
Yeah.
one.
So I
Yeah.
wouldn't, if it doesn't happen this year, it doesn't mean he lied, and that's one thing that I like. You know, I people know I'm upset about some things, but that's one thing. If it doesn't happen this year, don't be upset because they may not be able to.
Yeah, which is fine. But again, the fact that it's day one and not like 3 months later or 6 months later, that was one thing that people needed to hear. And I mean, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be a nice shot in the arm for Game Pass because Game Pass gets a lot of great games. Like we just got Dead Island 2, but we're talking like mega IP day one games like Call of Duty. I don't think Game Pass has really got a game like that yet, like a true mega IP like that. So if they market that game just right, like it could really shoot up Game Pass subs every year going forward. So that's a nice thing to see that although it's multiplat, Xbox will make the most of this game for the Xbox brand. So there's that. But going back though, yeah, I just wish they were more clear on the back catalog, not so much the future games being day one. I hope we get more clarification on, say, the June showcase, because I want to play the prototype series. Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, the 360 Call of Duty campaigns. I hope they at least give us a timeline, because I do realize that they have to do a lot more work per game because they have to put them, they have to make them cloud ready as well. All those third-party cloud gaming services that they promised. So I get it. They got to do more work per game, but at least give us a timeline in the coming months for those back catalog titles. So again, a minor complaint on my part there. But the thing I personally like the most that I needed to hear was that hardware is here to stay. That was the biggest concern the Xbox community had. Like, Xbox is going third party, publisher, hardware is going to fade away. Nope. Phil put that to bed real quick, which thank you. Like he says that our investments will be honored. Like, you know, the back catalog games we have, they will be preserved. Our gamers' investment in Xbox, it will be rewarded. It's nice to hear. There's a possible hardware revision this year. Like, you know, people say the discless Series X, great. It'll only reinforce that notion. But I think those 2026 next gen rumors, I don't know. I think when there's smoke, there's fire, and I personally would 100% support that. Not only it puts all those like Xbox 2027, all those ridiculous rumors to rest, but I do like the idea of Xbox kickstarting a new generation on their terms. Feel like the sales trends of this generation are kind of set in stone, like it or not. So what better way to start fresh than to just kickstart a new one? And I do like the idea that I'm inclined to believe that AI is their reasoning behind them saying it'll be the biggest leap in the console generation. If AI can really help optimize games and help developers optimize the games that they make, that could really be a game changer. Like it's like right now, this generation, I think a lot of us were. It's been a bit of a letdown in terms of a lot of games made sacrifices for resolution, frame rates, and especially ray tracing. Very little games can really do all three at the same time properly. There's always has to be a give and take. So a next gen, if it can make that that gap a little easier, then I'm saying I'm all for it. And it's only 2 short years away, so it'll be here before we know it. And I do also like the idea of them finally making a Switch-like dockable but also portable Xbox handheld. I think it'll be like a handheld console, so it's just like more simple that way, than a handheld PC kind of thing. And in that case, I'll buy both. Like I'll be using the one on the go. I'll be using the high end one in my basement where I game usually. So that would be a killer combo, and it feeds into Xbox's overall strategy. They want to increase the number of ways you can play, not limit them. So I'm glad their messaging on hardware was very clear and exactly what fans needed to hear. That not only are we not going away, we're giving you a revision this year, and we're working on the next gen. It's gonna be great. We're taking a lot of pride into it. So that's really all there is right there. Just I'm really glad they said that. And this business update, we need to hear it, and at least it'll give us enough time to talk about things and discuss things until the June showcase. Because between that and the developer direct before, we clearly see that they got the games. They're cooking away. There's more games to come. They said they have 10 games to release this year. We don't know about all of them yet, so we'll find out more soon. I heard Age of Mythology is coming out.
We have 7. Night. There's 7 listed so far,
including Age of Mythology.
Including Age of Mythology and Age of Mythology and Age of Empires Mobile. It's 7 so far.
Okay, yeah.
So some I can put the list in chat.
Yeah. So Xbox is in a good place. They're expanding. They're growing. And they're adapting to the future. The future, a lot of people are saying the future in gaming exclusivity will be harder and harder to maintain. And I just feel like Xbox, they're the first to really see that writing on the wall, and they're slowly changing it. And I think over time, let's say in 5 years, the gaming community is not going to care as much like we are right now. I'll just say that. It'll be a slow but sure change.
MLD, have you ever seen the movie Jerry Maguire?
I have.
Show me the money!
Show me the money.
Show me the money. Because Xbox, look, my position is one of confidence personally, especially when they reiterated about, next-gen hardware. Look, they got over 30 studios. They're knee-deep in, backwards compatibility. They want to move forward with things. Look, I'm confident where things are going with them. There probably will be a couple of back catalog games that will move over to other platforms, but I think that the flagship IP is staying where it is. I'm pretty confident right there. But yeah, I want to hear some more thoughts. Eric Shockley, but I would love to hear your position on this. Do you agree with what Grimes and MLD were saying? Please share your thoughts with us.
Yeah, for the most part. It's just been funny watching all the hysteria over the past few weeks. It's just weird that to me that when you look at these 4 games, just kind of, which many of us already pointed out, just look at the type of game they are. You have Pentiment and Hi-Fi Rush, which are kind of those small passion Hi-Fi Rush was a passion project for, I forget the director's name of Evil Within 2, but same thing with Pentiment, Grounded even, but stick to Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment. There's more single player indie type, AA type games, kind of like Ori, which we've seen go to Switch, both sequels. We've seen Cuphead. Obviously, it's not technically first party, but that was also went to PlayStation. But that was all Microsoft's doing. As the devs said, it was a lifetime exclusive because of the dedication Microsoft. They even said it, that game wouldn't have been what it was without Microsoft. So that's why they're kind of like beholden to, morally they didn't want to, try to like put it on the PlayStation because all the work Microsoft did for them. So like you've seen stuff like that before where Microsoft has put these games on other platforms, or in the case of Grounded and now Sea of Thieves. Grounded being pretty much, it's kind of like in that Minecraft stage where it needs to be launched even further to make it even bigger into something it could be. Again, this was a great game preview, kind of like Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves was basically, whether they want to say it or not, was kind of like released in a preview stage. Like it was released pretty bare bones when that first dropped, which I think that's probably why they initially did drop it in Game Pass. Just because of the work that was going to need to be added, the content that was going to be needed to be added. And I think it really grew into something really big once it hit Steam. Not so much just like PC and Xbox, but when it hit Steam, it saw a huge influx of even more people of like, oh, people really, catching on to this. And you hear this game, a few years, forget when it hit Steam, but after a few, I don't think it was there day one, but you even can see the people, playing it on Steam like concurrently or recently. So that game is kind of like getting in that stage. Obviously, the Grounded, Sea of Thieves aren't like Minecraft like level yet or anything, but there are those type of games where it's just a big community. It's kind of different from like Gears, where people might say it's a game of service. No, Gears is single player and it has a multiplayer on it. That's a big part of why people love that game, but that's a little bit different. Sea of Thieves is a game of service. It's kind of like a Destiny where it's like, yeah, you can play it by yourself, but it's going to be shitty. So it's kind of that community game where it needs to be on everything, kind of like Destiny. Same thing like that. So I think that's where people need to step back and, like he said, it's not a signal of all these games are going to come. And even just listen to the CEO. He even said in that quote, yeah, if I could get rid of exclusives, yeah, I would. But then he also says in that exact same quote, but that's not the playing field that we're in right now. We know that Sony's going to have exclusives, so we have to have them too. That was the whole thing. Otherwise, that's what people also need to think about for 2 seconds. Do you think they, just a few, not even a year ago, like a little over 6 months ago, they risked a almost near $69 billion deal getting destroyed because they wanted to make sure that they were holding on to the Bethesda exclusives when they were questioned about that, hey, well, how can we believe you if you're not going to take away Call of Duty from PlayStation? Because that was the FTC's whole thing. Because look what you did with Bethesda titles. Then they could have said, like, oh, shoot, we didn't need to renegotiate Indiana Jones. It was already a multiplat. Why did we renegotiate the whole deal just to, like, 6 months later? Oh, no, we're having discussions to completely flip that. Or same thing with, like, Starfield, like, and they disclosed in that same trials, Elder Scrolls being exclusive. So why would they like almost risk that getting destroyed, that whole deal, and then paying out $3 billion in a penalty? Well, actually, I think the penalty was more because they delayed it. Risk that happening because they were going to stand on business there, right? For exclusives, not that long ago, but now, you know what? We went through all that and it was successful, and we, got this deal closed. But you know what? Screw it. We'll just put all these games on, because that's the thing. The second you see a game of the level of a Hellblade 2, even though that might be a shorter
One
game
probably
or not
knows,
on the.
by the way, because
Yeah.
it's a cheaper game. It's
Yeah,
it's the same price range as the other ones.
Yeah, well, it is a little bit more. It's $50 game, so it's not quite on the level of like Ori or Hi-Fi Rush.
$50 8-hour experience.
Yeah,
They may
but
move that everywhere.
And you
I mean,
also
Halo
already
you
on
can beat in
PlayStation.
10 hours. Halo's a
This one
10-hour
was already
game.
on PlayStation.
If you played on Legendary, it's a 10-hour game. So I don't quite take it, but that's a game, that's the flagship title in the sense that was the game you first showed us for your new console. We didn't even know about Series X. You've showed us that game. So to see that game, briefly, the second that game goes to PlayStation, all bets are off. Then there is zero. Okay, everything is on the table. Whether it's Starfield, whatever that game is, if it's a Starfield, Indiana Jones. I wouldn't have said Indiana Jones, but since they technically said they renegotiated the whole deal, but the second one of those titles goes at Halo, then it gets to the point where it's like, okay, well then you're almost looking like at PlayStation now, where PC players that would buy a PlayStation because they wanted to play some of those exclusives, now even Herman Holst, the new person in charge, was saying, yeah, I think these release window between when we release it on PlayStation and when it gets ported to PC is going to get shorter. That's what people are going to start looking at. Look at Hi-Fi Rush. Look how short of a time not even, just exactly basically a year. So cool. They can just wait a year, just like they did for everything else. Rise of Tomb Raider. So I think that's where Microsoft is going to. They have to keep some exclusives. They can't. If one of those titles goes, then people can just know that they can just wait a year, and that's going to start to destroy some of the business that you have on the ecosystem. Because, what is the risk of, hey, I'm going to put this game over there? Maybe they'll buy it full price. Maybe they'll have to wait for a sale, and we're not getting the full price anyway. But think about the subscriptions you're going to lose, the revenue there. Okay, cool. Well, then I don't even need an Xbox. I can just save money, especially in this economy, buy one console, and then, I don't have to pay 2 subscriptions for multiplayer. I don't have to, it starts starting to add up. And then if you're not putting in that revenue, either buying the usual, annual games you buy, or just the microtransactions, we've seen where, both consoles took a hit in the revenue because less people were playing Fortnite because you're going back to work. During COVID, you saw kind of like that drop in each person's kind of revenue because people weren't, spending as much, just because they had more, they could actually go back to work. So that's what they got to think about, of the subscriptions you're going to lose. You're going to lose Game Pass subscriptions. That you're just going to shrink that even more, even if it hasn't been growing like they've wanted it to. That's going to start shrinking, and you're going to lose a ton more revenue and continual spending. Like, I have Game Pass. I'll buy. There's plenty of games that you want to play. I bought, even though Dead Space is in Game Pass now. I bought that day one, the remaster or remake. Same thing with Resident Evil. There's plenty of games that they make money on, third party wise, that they're going to want to continue to get that revenue. So that's where I think people got to think for 2 seconds. Microsoft would start losing a shit ton of money. That's because look at what they're making more revenue than they've ever made in their history. That's what people also got to think about, and that's because microtransactions, all of that. How are they doing that with one of the smallest outside of OG Xbox hardware? How are they able to get so much revenue? That's why, because people are spending in their store. So once you start messing with that to where the point where, hey, it's not just live service, just like Sony right now. Hey, there's day and date Helldivers 2, or Helldivers 2 is on PC day one. Well, does that mean every game is going to be on PC day one? Probably not. But there is that thing of it's not going to be everything, at least. So if you're going to do it, it has to be when Sony's starting to do it too. You cannot just be the only one. But that's what I think people just need to take that as it is. Just wait until they actually put one of those titles, whether it not be a games as a service like Sea of Thieves is not. I get it; it's rare, but it is not like a Halo. Just look at that type of game, and it's strictly just a community. It's barely any single player there. Like I've tried to play it by myself early on when like I didn't have many friends that were playing it. Like it was. I was at like there's nothing to do. There's no direction. There's no. You need that community. Now they've added stuff, obviously.
Yeah,
but...
you can play solo now with the new updates.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We've seen those like story stuff, but like it's a game that's gotten to where it is because of all these more platforms they've added it onto. Not if they just had it stuck to the Windows Store and Xbox, it would not be what it is. But it's gotten that reach, and it's kind of one of those games. They had Minecraft, so they kind of see what they've. And that's why they took Why was it Minecraft Legends? People made a big stink about that. Why is that going to PlayStation Day One? Because it's that type of community, and it's that one they could have held on to technically, because that's more of a RPG, but they didn't. So it's not like, hey, Rare technically made an exclusive for the DS. For under Microsoft, so for Diddy Kong Racing, I'm just saying, like, so it's not like that's where. But the second they put a Halo or something on the, Oak of Avowed or something like that, second that goes, then they are really playing with fire. Unless they know Sony's about to start doing it too, which I think Sony will get there. Like I think his quote was correct. In the next 5-10 years. You're probably going to see less exclusives. Because guess what? When Sony is starting to push those windows and make them shorter to PC for their big, Last of Us, whatever the game is, once those start getting shorter, it's like, okay, well, now why was PS5 platform not good enough? Because they needed more money. At a certain point, you look at between the console market, between Xbox and PlayStation, it's still been about the same if you total up all the hardware multiple generations in a row. It's just how much of that portion went to Xbox, how much of it went to for Sony. So that's relatively, that pool has been the same. So if you need to grow it, that's why both console makers, Xbox had to do it sooner because they're of the Xbox One where it was. But now even Sony, why would Sony need to do it? They're in a dominant position last gen, this gen. They're basically in their PS2 dominant like position, right? But yet they're putting their games on PC. They have to put Helldivers 2 Day One on PC, and they're shorting. They're making it a very short window when those games move over. Why would they need to do that? Why wouldn't they just hold on for a few more years to make it like, hey, we're going to really make it hard for you to not buy our PS5, even though if we put it on PC for the people that absolutely will never touch it otherwise. Why would they, try to make it easier for you to make that decision to skip their platform? But that's why, because they need to grow. They're looking at their margins, like he said.
But you see, it's also. Oh no, sorry, not to interrupt Shockley, but just to chime in. Like it's easy to chime in on Microsoft and like attack Microsoft for things that they're due because they always seem to be ahead of the game in my opinion when it comes to things. Like again, when they were putting their stuff on PC, releasing Day One on Game Pass, even just coming up with the idea of Game Pass alone, or going in so hard on like cloud gaming and so on, like.
TV is actually true today.
Well, yeah.
Every one of us uses our console for streaming services.
Like, okay, we can talk about the messaging behind that, but
they get bad at timing.
But they get so much crap. And I'm glad you chimed in there, Crusader. Yeah. But like, honestly, like at the same time, though, despite like, okay, some messaging issues, I would say, they are at the forefront when it comes to at least being open with, like, again, their gamers and consumers about things, despite how they go
which is their detriment. Yeah.
Because people one could argue that being too soon to pull the trigger is not a good thing.
Whereas Sony
that they're not as careful with it.
Whereas Sony and PlayStation address things much later on.
Yeah. When consumers are ready.
Yeah. Almost. Well, it's easier to do it from their position. They can wait.
Yeah.
Xbox has to like, okay, well, Sony's destroying us, last gen. How can we carve up more revenue? Oh, day one on PC. Okay, cool. Now that we're subsidizing, cool, we're finally getting back some of that revenue that we were completely not getting because we're not in our 360 position anymore. So they had to carve that out. Sony's carving it out because, well, shit, we just want to make more money.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we can only take so much from Xbox. So once we took a certain amount that won't move over, because Xbox still they can't get that other 25 million to just not buy that console. Well, okay, we'll put some games on PC. So same thing with, and really, in putting any games on Nintendo, I don't think really, you're not really losing those. People are buying a Switch because they want to play those games. They're not, people that buy a Switch aren't buying it for the third parties, because first off, they're not really getting any third parties other than like small games that are capable on that because of the hardware. So I don't think you have to really worry about that. That's why I think Sony or Nintendo would be the very last one to ever. And I don't know if they'd ever really put maybe at a certain point
margins
move their
are
games
insane.
over. But the thing about theirs is that's the thing, they don't get any third party, so it's not like Xbox and PlayStation where they're kind of like duking out and they get a bunch of revenue from a Resident Evil 4 remake. From Nintendo doesn't get any of that, so because they've burned all those bridges and they've decided, hey, we can't compete if we just make a traditional console. They will get destroyed. They will literally be the. You think things are bad for Xbox? If Nintendo came out and made a more expensive piece of hardware, maybe they'd ride some of that. But we've seen Nintendo didn't really get to where it was, other than lightning in a bottle with Wii U, with retirement homes buying their console, and the Switch just morphing their successful handheld business. So obviously they would have to separate those again, and you kind of go back to the handheld being successful, and then the stationary console, maybe not be. But back on track with that, with the Xbox, I think it's just hard to do with their messaging when you own so many publishers, so many devs that already have games that you're not going to take away ESO online. There's so much of that where it's like PlayStation. People are saying PlayStation doesn't want to do any of that. PlayStation went out, instead of taking the however $3 billion it was to buy Bungie, instead of locking down some great exclusives that could have brought people to their console. Like, hey, we just paid for this awesome, amazing game. Kind of like what they did with Final Fantasy. Fund something else that would have been a megaton, big hit that their fans would have gone crazy for. Nope, they went and bought Bungie, and they're going to continue to support their competitor. So they put that funding there. Think about that purchase. Sony or PlayStation fans didn't get anything out of that. At least when Xbox bought Bethesda, technically you are getting some exclusive. Maybe not Hi-Fi Rush. You had it for a year, but Starfield so far exclusive, Indiana Jones exclusive, and I don't think he'd come out on that screen and say, "Hey, it's if it was coming soon after this next expansion, like was rumored." If they were considering that, I don't think he'd come out and say, "Oh, it's not gonna, it's not these two games." Why would they? Everything else was already rumored. Halo, people were talking about Halo and Gears coming to PlayStation in that week of rumors. Everything was on the table, was being talked about. But he specifically came out and said, yeah, these two titles are not coming. Because otherwise, if in the next, people are saying, since they did these 4 games so quickly, that, that means, oh, they're going to have more games the rest of this year. They're going to have a whole nother, this was just the spring catalog. They're going to have a fall group of games that are going to come. But I think that's where people are kind of getting ahead of themselves. Technically, yeah, it was 4, but technically, well, it was only 2 on the Switch. It wasn't all 4. So there's only 2 so far. And then I think there was a couple, at least one of the titles I don't think was
4 were announced for PlayStation.
Oh, it was? Okay. I think at first there was a delay on it.
Pentiment, Hi-Fi Rush, Grounded, and Sea of Thieves were all announced for PlayStation. Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush are only coming to PlayStation right now.
Yeah. And I think that's where Microsoft is right now. They have so many. Just think about what they're a giant conglomerate now with the amount of like developers and everything they have. So there's going to be plenty for them to keep exclusive, and plenty they can kind of, like you said, case by case. They can kind of make that decision of, is this the type of game that's really going to, drive home like Game Pass and help our software, like a Starfield, like a game that's like literally a game that people were talking about, whether or not it didn't hit the 90 Metacritic or what have you. It was still, people were talking about that game. Like I would hear like comedians like in the mainstream, like I would hear just people that you wouldn't think of, gamers that you would see on podcasts that I listen to that aren't even gaming related, people talking about Starfield. Like it was that type of a big, people love Bethesda's, type of games like Fallout and all that. So they kind of have that huge draw. Indiana Jones, same thing. So they're going to have those titles that are going to have to be, these are the titles we are holding on. Other titles, they got plenty that they own that they don't need to do that with. Like we've seen with Sea of Thieves and any other probably small indies, you can probably bet that those are going to be on the table to go. Like if it's a small, Ori or Cuphead, something of that
Ori
ilk.
is a guarantee, actually, because Moon
but
has said
Ori's
that it's
never
up
been
to,
over there.
Yeah, Moon has said that it's up to Microsoft to do it, and Moon themselves want to do it. So I would actually very much assume that Ori would be sooner rather than later among games that are gonna go.
Yeah, I'm surprised that one hasn't gone over to PlayStation.
I'm surprised that wasn't among this 4, to be honest with you.
Well, we'll see. Yeah. I mean, it just could be specific cases, but yeah, I mean, that would be interesting. Anything else, Shockley?
No, that's pretty much it. Other than I'm not sure what to expect with the whole software or with the whole hardware announcement. What people, obviously that was an interesting thought of like with the AI of like, okay, how would they, when she says it like that, okay, that's how they reach and can reach whatever that, tagline she gave it. But definitely handheld would be interesting. At least that's thinking of how can we cut our own, into Switch's market possibly, because there was some of the reasons why I, wanted to switch, because at first, before we saw how maybe shitty some of the ports were, at first I was like, oh, okay, cool, I'm gonna buy my third-party games there on Switch as well. But then some of those didn't turn out so hot, so you kind of had to like, wait, how does that game run? Heck, their own first-party games kind of run like shit on the Switch. So it'd be cool if there'd be more of a more powerful, maybe closer, maybe not as expensive as a Steam Deck, but maybe something close to that, if they can kind of hit a sweet spot on that. Because they could actually probably mass produce it more so than a Steam Deck, just because it's more of a dedicated, and it carries over your whole library. But I don't know, we'll see what that turns into. So, but yeah.
All right. Well said there, Eric. Well said. Some pretty good points, some interesting thoughts and theories. All right, moving on. I'll hit up you, Crusader, then we'll go over to Dots, and then Centurion to round out the group. Cent, obviously you've been hearing half the guys talk, including myself. Please share with us your thoughts.
So let's get some things, just some high-level things out of the way first. Fundamentally, if Xbox releases a new console, I will buy the new console. And unless it's some weird cloud-powered nonsense where like half of it's being streamed in the cloud, I don't want that. I want my games to natively play on the console. I will buy whatever new hardware they put out. If they make because my opinion is that they're going to have a Series X like professional console, quote unquote, the high end one that like is meant for like us. And I don't think they're going to do a Series X or Series S next generation, like the equivalent. I actually think that will be replaced with the handheld SKU, which will, it'll perform like a Series S, right? Like, because like the handheld is not going to perform at the same resolutions or anything like that, just because of like how batteries work. Like it you can only draw so much power before you're killing a battery in like 30 minutes. I think they replaced their lower end SKU with the portable one because they can get basically everyone on this panel except for Dots, who's a PC gamer, to probably buy both. I think I can. There's rarely where I'll try to speak for everyone, but I think I could speak for every one of the Xbox enthusiasts on this panel that would probably buy both a handheld Xbox and a dedicated console Xbox if all of their games could play on both. Am I wrong in saying that, anyone? I really don't think I am. I think everyone would jump on that.
I get both.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, MLD, you said earlier, like straight up, and that doesn't. Nothing from the business update changes that. Why? Because I'm too invested in the ecosystem. I have 404 digital games. I have my Game Pass sub, and I have probably 50 or so physical games between weird 360 stuff that I've been buying recently and just some Xbox One games that I own physically back when I used to buy physical games. And so I'll move forward. Regardless of my opinions on what's going on, I will personally move forward. My fear is that they are moving too quickly with doing 4 games in 4 months, regardless of size or what they are. Because it leads, it paints a picture of they're kind of rushing to see how much they can do, how fast. So I get concerned. You know, I'm happy to see we're getting new hardware this fall. I doubt it's going to be like an Xbox One X. It'll probably be the all digital Series X, and it'll probably be like a new type of controller, like that rumored basically equivalent of the DualSense controller. That would probably be what comes out this fall. But until I actually see the next gen hardware being marketed, they can be planning to make stuff all they want, but if they lose too much of a consumer base, it's never going to actually see the light of day. Pretend you're the Windows Phone, and 3 years right before it was canceled, they were saying they have all kinds of cool plans for Windows Phone, and then 3 years are up and they killed Windows Phone. So they've reassured me that they are investing in the hardware and they plan to invest in the hardware, but I need to see them actually realize that before I'm truly comfortable with this move. They haven't ported anything yet that is disastrous, that would cause everyone to go, what the hell? I still truly think Sea of Thieves and Hi-Fi Rush are both mistakes. Grounded and Pentiment, actually, they hold no true bearing. In fact, they were both released on one of the worst years Xbox has ever had in 2022, and neither of them were able to build real brand association, and neither of them did anything exceptionally special for the Xbox brand. Hi-Fi Rush being ported, as I've said, is really probably I find it to be a really poor move because it's the first Xbox exclusive from Japan in ages and ages. And they're struggling to get Japanese games right now. We've had how many Final Fantasies skip the platform because Square Enix was willing to take a paycheck rather than port it to the console. With Rebirth being met with a standing ovation way above what Remake was met with. We had the most adopted JRPG of all time on Steam, hitting 100,000 concurrents with Grand Blue Fantasy Relink come out earlier this year. It sold 1 million copies in 2 weeks, and that skipped the platform with no exclusivity contract. We're seeing Monster Hunter World skip. We're seeing, or not Monster Hunter World, I apologize. Monster Hunter Stories, which is on literally every platform that it could be on, including iOS and Android, but not Xbox, from Capcom. And the new Gundam 4 game from Bandai Namco skipping. So porting your only leverage in the Japanese space is really, really strange to me, because you have basically that market still doesn't take you seriously, and you're removing the only games from that market that set you apart for anyone else, and that's a bad move in my opinion, regardless of its size. And Sea of Thieves, I've said before, I'm not going to go into the whole tangent about it again, but if Sea of Thieves couldn't build brand identity in the way that Halo and Gears could, then I fear for what can build platform identity. with 35 million players on Xbox for or across Xbox and PC for Sea of Thieves. I really don't know what that says for the future of what can build console identity to expand like what makes Xbox versus other platforms. But that being said, I actually do think that it would be, as a high level thought, I do think it would be best for the industry if all of the major platforms were separated their software from their hardware and put their software everywhere, like all of it. But it takes all three platforms to do that. You can't just have Xbox doing it because it just makes the other two platforms look better. Because, you know, if it does come to Halo going to other platforms, you're going to have some people going, why did I get an Xbox for Halo Infinite when I could have gotten a PlayStation for Halo Infinite and Spider-Man? And that's something that Microsoft did not really answer in their whole thing, besides simply not showing any highly notable games yet that they're testing the water. Because eventually they will test the water with one to see how it works. If this whole thing is about testing the water to see what they do and can't do. But like I think it would be way better if the industry moved to having no exclusives, because the software would have to compete with software for software's sake, and the hardware would have to compete with hardware for hardware's sake. Like, what does your hardware actually do that's different from my hardware? Like, that's how the PC ecosystem is, right? Like, NVIDIA and AMD in the graphics card sector don't make games. Like, neither of them have a first party, right? And the only way that they compete with each other is by investing in exclusive features and feature sets, and investing in companies to actually implement that, like with stuff like DLSS, NVIDIA Reflex, FSR, things like that. And I think we would get better hardware if they actually had to compete on hardware to hardware sake, right? Because right now, like, not a lot of companies actually do stuff well with quick resume, and it ends up actually breaking a lot of games. Like Tales of Arise, just kind of, if you have the performance mode on and you have quick resume on, it just kind of breaks the game. And you can't turn quick resume off, so you have to like switch it to quality mode. I was having horrible crashes until I switched it out of performance mode to quality mode and started killing the game after every play session. But you know, if they actually had to fight with the hardware for the hardware's sake, you would see more investment into getting companies to actually do that kind of stuff right, and then advertising that. And the same thing could be said for PlayStation, because like no third party does DualSense features well. It's only the first parties that do that stuff well. And so if PlayStation actually had to fight for PlayStation's sake for the hardware, they might actually invest into that, and you'd see cooler things. And then you would see cooler hardware-specific things. And so, like, I think it would be a really good move. Like in principle, I find this move from Microsoft to be really good. I just find that they're executing it really poorly. Because they say that, like, oh, this is to build the brand in more places, and this is to, like, expand these IPs and stuff like that. And then they do shit like not put the Xbox versions at the center of the photos when even Limited Run did that, but Obsidian's Twitter didn't. And then you see crap like they're not using Xbox Game Studios as the publisher name on PlayStation. It's Microsoft Corporation. And they don't have the splash screens when you load into them. Like Pentiment doesn't have the Xbox Game Studios splash screen. And so, like, you see really, like, weird things like this where it's like they're not, even if, like, the plan was to kind of show you, put Xbox in your face and show what the Xbox brand can be everywhere, they're not doing it well. It seems very haphazard and like unplanned. And we can't say that the releases are unplanned, because they were planned for a Nintendo Direct that got delayed a week so Xbox could have their business update, which is also really strange that like 2 of these games were going to be announced at a Nintendo showcase, and then they were basically just going to do a blog post afterwards. And that was going to be the announcement if it hadn't leaked beforehand. Like, I haven't seen a lot of people talking about that. That, you know, they moved that, them talking about it on that podcast up to basically before when the stuff was going to happen, instead of after. And that's just, again, really strange. Like, it's like they vastly overestimated like what people would think about it, because like people would be freaking out if they just showed up at a Nintendo Direct. I guarantee it. And I really wish they had come out and gave an example of like why certain games at this point aren't being considered. I think that was something that was sorely missing, because all they said was like Starfield and Indiana Jones weren't among the first 4, right? Like, they didn't explain why Indiana Jones. I mean, Indiana Jones can kind of be assumed because they said that like games. It obviously couldn't be, because they said it would be at least a year until the game after the games are released before they'd come to another platform. So of course Indiana Jones wasn't going to be among the first 4 games that it would happen to. Makes sense. Like that's kind of self-explanatory. But like, not talking about why Starfield wasn't, and not saying something along the lines of maybe in the future, but right now porting Starfield would do more harm to our brand than good, is just something they didn't say. And like, they could have said like that calculus could change later, but right now it would damage our brand more than like the short-term revenue gain would not outweigh the damage to our brand with porting a game like that. That's something they didn't say, and I think that was the biggest failing of the business event, was that we got some criteria as to games they are considering, with the games being smaller or games as a service, but we didn't get any criteria for games that aren't being considered. Like, you know, do I think that they're going to port Halo anytime soon? No, but I have no way to set my, like, you know, if I'm a scale, I have no way to set my scale to 0 anymore, right? So, like, I really don't think that they're going to port Halo, like, anytime soon, but Halo Infinite's a games as a service game. And games as a service was one of the those, you know, big, these are the games we're looking at kind of category as to making multi-platform. So like, what? You know, like, do I need to think that Halo could be a game that you're considering? You know, obviously it's not coming right now because it's not among the first 4, but like, are you guys looking at this in the future? Are you guys looking at like the Gears of War games? Are you looking at Forza? You know, because like those are like, they're big games that are games as a service style. Motorsport is, Halo is, Gears of War 5 was, right? So it's like, what you doing here? Because you didn't give me enough information to know. I also want to touch on the interviews that Phil Spencer did. I think he should straight up have not answered the question about Indiana Jones and Starfield in Tom Warren's interview. I think that it was it was missed in the business update, but he talked about it with Stephen Totillo in his interview with him, that they still care about physical to some extent. And we actually saw that with the limited run releases getting announced for the games that should have had physicals like a year ago. But we saw those get announced, and he talked about how they recognize they have to respect physical because people own a lot of physical. And there are people who still care about physical, so they're gonna keep doing stuff with physical. But they recognize that most of their consumers do digital, which implies to me that even if they do an all digital next generation, that they will have a detachable disk drive, because there's really no other way to interpret that. That they will respect what you freaking own, and they will provide something for you to be able to play it at probably an additional cost, whatever. That was one of my big tangential concerns with this whole thing, because of like the whole digital future and laying people off. I'm happy that while they didn't address it at the business update, they addressed it in general, and that people who wanted physical games for some of these Xbox games got physical games for the Xbox games, because if they had released PlayStation versions of those games without without physical versions for Xbox, that would have been a nightmare, and they would have deserved every person yelling at them for that. So, you know, I'm very critical that, and they picked an awful time to do this first batch, because it's not like they pulled the games forward and announced them early, right? Like, this is when those games were always going to be announced and launch with Nintendo, you know, at this Nintendo Direct, and then the PlayStation ones following the Direct. And I really think that they did not read the room well enough, and they shouldn't have done it when PlayStation is releasing a massively money-hatted exclusive title, right? Their third Final Fantasy major game, main release game in a row that they paid for exclusivity for, and are showing that exclusivity kind of works. Alongside things like Helldivers, and again, at that Nintendo Direct, they had games that were announced at that Nintendo Direct that aren't coming to Xbox. Like, I think that, like, that this couldn't have been handled more poorly, and planned more poorly. I think it should have been an Xbox special direct with Nintendo that was like 5 minutes long and just announced the 2 games in cooperation. And I think that entirely, if they could have gotten like Nintendo on board to port a couple minor games at the same time, that this would have gone over better, because you need, it takes 2 to tango, right? It takes 2 to dance, essentially. And people would be far more accepting to this if they could have gotten another industry partner to work with them, or a massive third-party publisher to come out and say, like, we fully support them in this, and we plan to do no exclusivity moving forwards because it just is damaging to the industry. Like, there are better ways to have handled this. It's kind of like they didn't have the backing of like Beyond themselves truly. At least directly with them, like they did with crossplay, where Nintendo kind of publicly backed them about crossplay with Fortnite, and Epic publicly backed them with crossplay, and now we have crossplay everywhere. Like, there's just so much that they just did poorly, and the messaging is just so poor about all this. And like, the biggest games are going to be on Xbox, according to Sarah Bond, except, you know, if we're only talking about the games like Fortnite and GTA 5, that's kind of really a depressing future that is like the biggest things that we're concerned about playing. B, that's kind of like the basis of what any platform should be. So like, that's kind of like setting the minimum bar and not setting something that you should be excelling towards. And C, it's still kind of not true, because things like Genshin Impact, which is like one of the huge gacha game, one of the biggest games played, biggest moneymakers, is just not on Xbox. So like, that they missed the mark there a lot, in my opinion, with that statement. It's just a mess. Like, I'm just not confident in believing anything. And they say that like they're not opening the floodgates, but they said that exact kind of stuff with when they were going to PC, that not all games are going to come to PC, and then very quickly every game came to PC. So like, they don't even have their own credibility to back them. And it's just so kind of frustrating. Ultimately, I want to believe that there are enough people like us to sustain still purchasing the Xbox consoles for them to exist. I don't know that there are, but I want to say that there are. Because it's just so kind of frustrating that they're moving ahead very quickly like this, in the same way that it feels like they moved ahead with TV, and it's just gonna damage them more than it helps them. And then in a few years later, both Nintendo and PlayStation will do something similar, and they'll be fine because they waited a little bit longer and did it slower and more carefully. So, I'm not leaving Xbox. I'm still gonna buy stuff on all my stuff on Xbox. It's just that like, it's so. Anyone who says that they're upset that they bought an Xbox instead of a PlayStation is probably also kind of valid, because like, they thought things were gonna be one way, and then things turned out another way. And honestly, they also kind of showed you can just, like Phil said, he doesn't want people to just think that they can wait and do stuff. But he didn't really give any solid rules or set any real precedents about talking about how like specific games wouldn't be moving. So like, they didn't really do enough to demonstrate why you shouldn't just wait and force them to port stuff everywhere. So like, again, I just think it was a big mess, a big old mess. That's about all I got to say. It's a big old mess.
All right.
Did you want me to talk on the Intel stuff?
I mean, if you want to mention a bit of it, sure.
Yeah, the Intel stuff's really cool. Because it was rumored that Xbox may be looking to not work with AMD, which normally I don't give any thoughts to what Moore's Law is Dead has to say about anything. The guy's a fraud. But this does actually give that a little bit of credence, because he said that they were looking to partner with Microsoft on a much larger Intel partnership. So like, maybe Microsoft is going to move to Intel for their next Xbox line, which could be really cool, because AMD just doesn't do anything in the machine learning space, like at all, and it's kind of really to their own detriment. And even if we're not talking like AI, like true AI models, machine learning is really useful for things like DLSS, and any kind of upscaler to do it far more efficiently. And Intel has a really good upscaler. It's not quite DLSS, but it's really good compared to like FSR from AMD. And if Microsoft was to come in and do a like have XeSS on the next gen consoles, that would be huge, especially for the handheld, because you could render stuff at a much lower resolution, upscale that bitch to look good on that little portable screen, and you'd be cruising. And you'd be using less power because the less work a computer does, the less power it uses. And the less you have to turn up the clocks on those processors, the better. And like that could actually be really big if they partner with Intel. And one other thing, Microsoft truly should have waited a year or two to do this, because if they could have demonstrated how their hardware itself is totally different from someone else's hardware, and like be like, yeah, but where else can you buy a handheld and a regular console and all your games work across both of them, right? Then you're making it so the exclusivity doesn't matter as much as the features that you're truly getting, right? Because I truly don't think that either console has a feature set good enough to do it. But like you start getting stuff like you partner with Intel and you start getting stuff like we're the console that has XeSS, and you start doing cool things like cool console synergies like that. I actually really think that Microsoft could pull it off, even being the underdog, and to not go like we're gonna have a handheld console that'll move your stuff between it. To not be that confident and say something like that, I think was a miss, right? Probably should have waited till next year to do this, or the year after. Just giving it more time until you were more prepared to be like, this is why you're still going to want the Xbox consoles. They just didn't do that. Yeah, now I'm done.
All right. Thank you for your commentary there, your thoughts, Crusader. Always appreciated. Yeah, no, I'm probably the one with like the more glowing endorsement of Xbox, I guess you could say. I mean, they do have, they do have stuff like, who would have thought a game like Pal World, for example, would have exploded the way that it did, and it's only on, it's on PC, but it's also on
didn't think
Xbox.
Pal World was going to explode the way it did.
But again, they do have third-party stuff, right? I'm not, again, I do agree to an extent with what you're saying, but I mean, it's not like, because, hey, the PlayStation guys are all begging for bloody Pal World, even the Nintendo guys. They're like, hey, Pokemon Company, why can't we get some of this stuff? But, it is what it is.
Yeah, Pal World's definitely what people have been begging Pokemon to be for a long time, and now Pal World's eating their lunch on some aspect. But,
Nice.
hey, at least we got Shin Megami Tensei 5 from Nintendo, so that was a trade, right? No.
Yeah, suppose so. Right? Okay, Dots, I'll go over to you, and then we'll round things off with Centurion's thoughts.
Yeah. I definitely don't have anything super long-winded to hit with. I mean, a lot of the heavy points were hit. I actually very much agree with a lot of things General MLD said. I think out of everyone, that I kind of am leaning in the same mentality that he is. So kudos to you on that. But no, I don't see really the big issue on this. Like I see 4 games that Xbox did well with, and they have been on Xbox for at least a year, if not more, and putting them on PlayStation and in Nintendo is honestly not even, it's not Gears of War, it's not Halo, they're not games that you say, when you say Xbox, that those aren't the first things that pop in your head. Obviously, could this set a precedent? Could this set a forward push into that direction? Time will tell. obviously Microsoft is, as we say all the time, it's a business, and if it's going to make money in the process, putting more games on more consoles while not having to rely on, as we've also said, consoles are usually a detriment. They lose money on console sales. They have to make it up on games. Then putting the games out in more places just means more of an intake. And so at the moment, I don't think it's an issue. Like I said, I agree with General on a lot of things he said. I will also agree with Crusader, though, that the communication aspect of this was very much not good. I think that the long holding of your breath waiting for this little like pre-recorded podcast talk that they had was not the play, because it all started with, like, was it like rumors, or was it like actually like confirmed rumors, or like
It was a bunch of credible sources and maybe a couple not so credible ones put out a bunch of reports about stuff, saying that Microsoft is considering X, Y, and Z game. Basically, all of them said Hi-Fi Rush. A bunch of them said Sea of Thieves, and there were some other games like Starfield, Indiana Jones, and Gears of War. Halo was never mentioned in an official report. Halo was more from like random people online. But there were some more or less credible people saying Halo. And I also wouldn't discredit any of them that seem like they're not true now, because we don't know how much changed internally. We also don't know what the sources that the people actually saw was, because it could have been, Microsoft probably did look over their entire game catalog and be like, what are we doing? What are we not doing? Let's come up with models for all of it.
So on the internal boards, they might have said, hey, this might be on the chopping block.
Right.
But
they could have said,
just
like,
a topic of conversation, not an actual, this is what we're going to do.
Correct. Starfield's a great example, because the leak said that it was going to come shortly after its first expansion drops. And that legitimately could have been a model that someone proposed for what we could do with Starfield. And it was not the model that was chosen to move forward with Starfield, or even they backtracked and chose a different model after the fan reaction. We don't know these things. Yeah. And so I'm very hesitant to say that anyone who reported on anything was wrong about any of this, because it could have been a bad game of telephone where facts were misconstrued. It happens a lot with leaks. I cover them a lot. So I would be very careful to say anyone was actually wrong in their reporting, outright wrong.
Well, yeah. So like feeding off of that, like it just seems that obviously when a leak happens, it's just that, it's a leak. The company usually does not plan for that to happen. So yes, while they did maybe need a day or two to get a proper response out, I feel like it was a lot much more. Like, how long did it take for them to put out the podcast when the leak first came out?
It was 2 weeks. I mean, honestly, it's been about 3 months since the first Hi-Fi Rush, or since this all started.
Yeah,
when,
it was before
what's his name?
Christmas.
Tim Stewart made the comments about Nintendo and PlayStation being places that Xbox was looking to put games, and it hasn't really stopped since then. And that was official. That wasn't even a leak. That was the CFO saying dumb shit to investors, and it never really stopped since there. And stuff kept happening, and it took them until now to fully actually address it. And they didn't. It could have been an email.
And even even though I wasn't really in the loop with that all before Christmas, which means AKA you probably mentioned it and I completely ignored you, because I do that from time to time. It's mutual both ways. But even like with this recent thing, I mean, I know it was all over Twitter. That's the massive, not literal Xbox players throwing themselves from rooftops kind of drama that was on Twitter. Like, it just felt like the response to all of that was way too short. It easily could have been solved with a single tweet saying calm your tits, it's not that bad, and so we had to wait with gasped breath, for that one podcast where we got our answer, and that the answer is, here's what we're doing now, but if you want the full answer, that's coming later, because we'll see how it goes, kind of thing. I agree with Xbox's business strategy of, hey, putting more games on more consoles is good. I think that their delay in that message, or obviously if it was them needing to just do some pivoting because they didn't know that their boat had as many holes that was filling up as it was, and so it's a, once again, we're turning into another waiting game. What's next on the chopping, like after these 4 games, what's next? How deep is this going to go? Are we actually going to see enough, is Microsoft going to see enough out of this to, say, okay, we need to keep doing this, or maybe the strategy isn't as good as we thought. We're going to stick to what we know at least, and the console wars continue with exclusivity titles. I think Xbox is on the side of, sharing is caring, and more players is better than, more players in total is better than more players on our console. I think that has really been showing recently. And obviously, they have a strong PC front on top of their Xbox front, so they're definitely doing very well in that regard. But yeah, so those are my main points on the recent Xbox Microsoft strategy focus. Beyond that, I mean, yeah, it's a waiting game. We're gonna have to see. I'm personally excited. Gotta do my little plug-in with the last 3 letters of my username. I just watched that Age of Empires stream that they had going on. And that's obviously Microsoft's premier RTS company they have acquisitioned, and there's a lot of good stuff coming, and I've said this before on the podcast, I don't see much in the RTS genre on PlayStation, and as I wouldn't even say it's really a niche genre, because there is a lot of people who play RTS. For a whole while, that was South Korea's whole thing was, kicking our asses in StarCraft 2, or StarCraft 1 even. So we're while obviously I still am also kind of perturbed about the lack of the big title Final Fantasy games on PC and Xbox. Xbox itself has, and Microsoft has, so much good stuff for them that people are, the fact that people are looking at the big names only is a travesty, because there's so much good stuff that doesn't have to be big. Power World is a great example. People being like, oh, Power World lost over 80% of its player base in a month or so. It's yeah, because they beat the game. And when there's new content for the game, they'll come back because they already own the game. 9 million people bought the game. The devs got their money's worth. So that's not a loss for them. And the CEO even said the same thing. He was good. They played the game until they didn't want to play anymore. They got their enjoyment out of it. We're happy. It's okay they stopped playing, and they'll come back when we put in more content. And so right now, Helldivers. Now that's obviously under the Sony branch, but PlayStation and PC right now. But I've been seeing memes out the wazoo of PlayStation fans being please let the Xbox players have the game. We need more people in the game to complete the world objective. Xbox players know how to ODST drop pod into enemy territory and play PvE games with each other. We need their expertise to come help us. And it's silly stuff like that, but it's that playing together, playing all these different types of games, Yeah, sure. I'm upset. I can't play Final Fantasy 15 on an Xbox, or I'm 16, not 15, 16. On Xbox or PC. Yeah, sure. I'm upset, but like, I got Palworld. I got Helldivers. I got, I still play Halo Infinite. I make sure to get my the weekly challenge done every week. I've been working on the season passes still because they last forever. So there's no negative. I don't want to play super competitive. There's firefight mode in it still that, gives plenty of XP and whatnot. So you're like, I'm still enjoying the games I own that are Xbox, PC, compatible, even if, I don't have access to everything on PlayStation. Yeah, I played Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm not going to be able to play Rebirth out the gate, which sucks, but I have other things to play. I'm not going to gripe over it. I'm definitely not going to buy a PlayStation 5. I'd rather buy a Series X before I buy a 5 at the moment, even if I don't really honestly play my Xbox all that terribly too much. But like, we are in a good spot right now, and there's so much coming out this year. I hope comes out this year, that like the people are, people being like, Xbox fans on suicide watch because of, that recent news. I know a lot of them were being over dramatic about it, but like, we are in such a good place right now, and I don't think there's any like reason to fret at the moment. So I'm positive about it. Like, I think Microsoft could do better with their communication with us, but outside of that, with what we currently have and what we know is currently coming, I'm positive. I don't see an issue with. I'm content with the economy, right? The gaming economy we're in, and it's just going to get better with more stuff that comes out this year, especially for Xbox. So,
All right. Well said points there, Dots. Great to see you're sticking with the team. You're sticking with Xbox. That's awesome. Let's see. All right, Centurion. Let's round out the crew here. Again, you've had a chance to listen to everybody's thoughts, opinions, so on. Please round out the group. Like, what are your thoughts on this whole, like, again, situation? And I guess what's your opinion on this, really?
I still try to formulate words on this because, as I said in my video, and I'll say it here,
Mhm.
I could give a flying rat's ass. Like, for starters, and I know there's probably going to be some people that are going to object to this, so hopefully I get all this out. But for starters, when it comes to the gaming media, they ain't your friends. They ain't here to tell you the truth. They're here to collect their fucking paychecks. I'm sorry, but if you really want to know let's just say it right now. I do digital marketing for the place that I work for, and it is my job to get them clicks on their website and their Facebook ads and their Google ads. What do you think the gaming media is there for? You think they're there to be your friend? No. They're there to write an article that's going to feed into your emotions to get you to click on it. Did you know I just saw an article the other day about Skull and Bones that I happened to read. Yeah, Forbes. You know what the funny part is? I couldn't even read the damn article. The ads literally were bleeding into the lettering. Literally, it was like, hey, check out this 30-second video about Skull and Bones and why it's a bad game. You couldn't even see the video because the advertisement was overlaid over it. There is so much advertising on these freaking websites that they are collecting dollars while you sit there and get incensed into your feelings about what you're reading. And that stuff is written to drive SEO, to get you to click on it, and to basically drive you to want to come back and get some more because these guys know how to play head games with you emotionally. I actually do not like the concept of leaking. I don't like the concept of rumors because, like I said in my video, being a convicted individual, I have watched rumors and leaks destroy people. That's also led to very horrible, disparaging um, takes on different segments of people that deserve don't even deserve to have those kinds of rumors circulating about them just because they happen to be a certain demographic of individual. Same with what's going on with Xbox and PlayStation. Looking at some of at least the analytics I love to read, is PlayStation has done an amazing job of blinding people. Like this is where I say I've heard the word identity so many times tonight, and it revolves around games. Let's take games out of the equation. Like, don't even bring one game that you play or enjoy to play or have seen into the conversation. Let's talk about the identities of Xbox and PlayStation outside of the IPs that they produce. Xbox, a brand that loves to be pro-consumer, that actually takes consumers' purchases seriously. Their executives actually do make an attempt to actually have interaction with the consumers that actually consume their products. Interestingly enough, even though Xbox went to PC, I still don't play my games on a PC. We have discovered that even though, you know what everybody right now, if you want to have the one machine that plays everything, PC. If it's not available, there's someone there to help you pirate it or create an emulator for it. There is very nefarious ways to almost play anything you want on PC. We obviously don't see every gamer and their grandmother playing on PC. We do see a large percentage of people actually choosing to game on their consoles. The interesting part is about the PlayStation console is they have become price gouging. And Xbox is deceptive. Like, in my opinion, Xbox's tone has actually kind of remained the same. When everybody plays, we all win. They want to increase the areas that I could consume my games and play them. And that's where let's talk about PlayStation. Oh, we believe in generations, but we're going to secretly release PlayStation. Excuse me, we're going to release Spider-Man, Miles Morales, and some other games on the PS4 without telling you, because we would rather convince you that it's PS5 only. What about the concept of, we're going to give you game upgrades for free? And then they tried to take that back and tried to get people for Horizon Forbidden West. And just all of a sudden they were like, oops, my bad. That's right. We did tell you we'd give it to you for free. Well, this will be the only one because we want to change our strategy. Oh, that's okay, PlayStation. Go ahead, change your strategy. We don't want to go day and date with our subscription service. As a matter of fact, we want to raise the price of our subscription service. We want to take away features of our subscription service while we raise the price. Oh, by the way, we also want to make horrible negotiated deals for our consumers that make it to where Discovery can take back their purchases, and we can also decide to start screwing around with Crunchyroll and basically making it extremely difficult for people to be able to consume animated material from the East. And that's where I have to laugh at, like, how physical media is being completely dissolved by a lot of people, a lot of retailers, but Japanese, Asian, Japanimation, the anime sector really got its bread and butter and got into people's homes by physical releases. I mean, Dragon Ball Z, Vampire Hunter D. We could go all day long on how the only way for us to consume this stuff before streaming was to go out and find these physical discs that were extremely difficult to find. And for now, whatever reason, Sony wants to make it extremely difficult for streaming this stuff to become a pain in the ass now. If you take a look at the actual identities of the two brands, it becomes abundantly clear that one actually does want to push itself forward and also respect the audience that already is part of its ecosystem. Hence why Phil Spencer said, we don't want to continually nickel and dime the consumers we already have. We would like to attract more. At this point, with what PlayStation has done, they have to literally try new things. And yes, they are going to experiment releasing some titles on the PlayStation. And if they're a success, there is going to be more to come. And this is where I kind of like what Crusader said about if they switch to Intel, machine learning, it's going to change the hardware game. and pretty soon you would literally have a reason to almost like contemplate which console do I want to purchase, which technology appeals to me more. Like I really do feel that is like everybody wants to talk about like Xbox had all this stuff going in the 360 generation. Actually, there's a reason why PlayStation was able to catch up with them, even launching the console, the PS3 late compared to the 360. That was Blu-ray. Xbox went with HD DVD. There was a major disparity between the two platforms when it came to a feature set that people were interested in, and everybody could see the writing on the wall that Blu-ray was far superior than HD DVD. So, do I want a console that only plays games and has a failing DVD platform, or do I want a console that can play games and is going to win out on the disc wars between HD DVD and Blu-ray? The whole reason why I bought a PS3 was Blu-ray. Playing games was just kind of like the icing on the cake, because Blu-ray for me was like the next best thing since sliced bread. I enjoyed seeing 1080p and not having to watch 480i and all this other stuff. Call me a picture junkie. But routing back to Xbox, I just really do feel that Xbox has themselves in a very good position. They have the money to be able to experiment. They're not like PlayStation, where like 50% of the company lives and dies on what happens to PlayStation. And Xbox has the ability to experiment and do some things that people might find a little bit unusual. Just kind of like the Xbox One, oh my God, the idea of being able to tell my console to turn on and have a device in my home listening, it's so horrible. Hold on, let me go tell my Alexa device to go order more Tide Pods. Like we look at what's commonplace today, Xbox has always been ahead of the curve. Kind of like what Crusader said, sometimes to their own detriment. But Xbox, again, always has the money to weather the storm. They also know how to pivot very quickly. So if by some chance these 4 games don't turn out to, like right now, yeah, they're doing great, but is it really going to drive the needle? Because like look at God of War. God of War technically only appealed to about what 20% of the entire PlayStation 4 community. We won't even bring PS5 into the equation. We'll just say PS4, and it was like 20% of the people that own PlayStations bought God of War. Like, does that really sound like a big success?
That's an insane attach rate, by the way. 20%. Outside of Nintendo worlds, like the average attach rate for any piece of software is only like 8%.
Right, but
20% is nuts.
But in my industry, 20% is horrible. Like I'm just saying from a number standpoint, if we're looking at numbers, like for us, it's more like, oh God, damn, like that didn't really drive the needle. Like it's kind of interesting that for PlayStation, the number one driving brand, the number one driving game for their console is Call of Duty. That's why we saw Jim Ryan act the way he did. Like Call of Duty, that's a game that drives the needle. And we see Xbox totally understands that Call of Duty needs to remain multiplat. I remember so many people like Call of Duty needs to become exclusive. Well, they'll just completely destroy the Call of Duty brand. Like that doesn't make sense. That
I agree with you on that.
And that's where I mean, like it's interesting that I understand that there is people out there that want to somehow have games be the identity of a brand, but that's where we see how that's working out for PlayStation right now. PlayStation just gave Bungie an ultimatum that they have to somehow right the ship and quit hemorrhaging money and really show that their purchase of Bungie was worth it. Nothing like kind of like setting that tone over at Bungie. Nothing like coming to work every single day feeling like you're walking on eggshells and fire and coals, just like, oh my God, is this going to be the day that PlayStation executives come in here and really flip the entire company on its head and things totally change? That's what now all of a sudden the people designing Marathon, are they going home sleeping at night, or are they like staying up all night going like, dude, if Marathon does not work out, we are FUCK'd. Like, look at Xbox though. I understand Xbox has had layoffs. I understand Microsoft has had layoffs, but it just feels like Microsoft has a little bit more control of the situation when it comes to the layoffs. Like they understand that, like I'm just saying layoffs are bad, but at the end of the day, I feel like Xbox is able to be a little bit more strategic and really able to, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not be as cold-hearted and just start laying off people, large swathes of people like Embracer Group, where
I
they
don't know.
just
They did 1,900 in one day. Like,
but that's where it comes down
It's a
to.
very nuanced situation there.
is
Dude,
it?
Blizzard went
yeah.
on a hiring spree in the pandemic, with or without the overlap.
I
That's
mean,
a whole other
so
matter.
did every studio, and that's why everyone's laying people off. But it's still
Exactly,
cold-hearted.
but that's the only thing. That's where you should do a little better planning. Everybody seemed to like, oh my God, pandemic money. Let's all cash in. And it's just like everybody got like, it's pretty screwed up that executives knew that the pandemic was not going to last forever and that a lot of people were going to be considered expendable when at least certain company, like you should have been a little bit more reserved. Xbox can't really help the fact that Blizzard did that. I'm not going to say that what their decision was totally 100% a-okay.
Well, remember, they
they're
laid
not-
off people within Xbox in that 1,900 too. It wasn't just
Oh, yeah.
Blizzard. Blizzard was just the biggest one. Like, it's not like I believe it's something like a total of 1,100 of that came from Activision Blizzard, and 700 came from, or 800 came from Xbox's other studios and ZeniMax.
And you know what though? It is what it is. It's just times are becoming a little bit difficult for everybody, and you know, just because they're a $1 trillion company, this is why everybody seems to think that this is a charity organization. Richard Hogue said it best. They are not able to act like a charity organization. When you are a publicly traded entity and you have shareholders and stockholders, you actually are required by federal effing law to actually make sure that your stockholders hold priority over everything.
Well, sure, but there are ways to do that without laying people off, such
Yep.
as completely reorganizing things and investing into more things, so that you have a midterm strategy instead of just laying the people off for short-term value gain. Like, we legitimately have like interviews with Miyazaki over at FromSoft coming out right now, where they're like, "How have you had released games so quickly with such success?" And he's like, "Well, we retain our staff," and you know, so. The argument can be made: are layoffs actually the fiduciary? Like, are you actually just laying people off? Are you withholding or not withholding? I can't think of words tonight. Are you upkeeping that fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders by laying people off just to get that short-term revenue balance, rather than actually doing something more serious to change direction and actually invest better? Like,
hey, look at that. They're putting games on other platforms.
Sure.
Look at that. Look at that.
That's why I said that it was a good move in general.
Yeah,
I've been sitting here silently for a while, but that's where I'm just trying to say that you know that they've only laid off 1,900 people. Dude, Embracer Group is laying off more than that, and they are completely planning to probably more than likely do more.
I know it's not the same.
Xbox is at least trying to mitigate the casualties of this experience, and they are trying to make decisions that not only nickel and dime me, but also keep other people sitting at their desks employed. But we're over here screaming and crying that heaven forbid PlayStation gamers can play Sea of Thieves.
Yeah. I mean, just to add on, like, the job losses, I mean, obviously, you know, the tech gets focused on a lot in recent years because of the amount of layoffs that have been going on. But hell, even, like, you look at other industries, like UPS, like, they laid off like 12, 13,000.
It's awful.
Like, it's terrible. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just saying that, like, it's a worldwide.
Part of those layoffs.
Yes, he was.
Oh, really? You see, I didn't even know about that. Or at least I didn't catch that. I'm sorry, man.
It's not a problem.
He's good. He's employed again.
Which is fantastic.
I'm not championing for layoffs. That's what's sad about it. But at least Microsoft is trying to make an attempt to like at least satiate their shareholders by laying off as little as people as possible, and at the same time trying new strategies and directions for the brand to be able to satiate the shareholders so that way they don't demand more layoffs. And
There will be more layoffs
There will be
throughout
more
the year.
layoffs.
Yep.
Yeah.
There
well, yeah, we can already see the
probably
direction of
will.
stuff going. Like, yeah, and that. But I'm just saying, but nobody has a. That's what I don't like about leaks and rumors. Nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody has all the information
That's
except
fair.
for the people over at Xbox. Now, here's the say: what if by some chance during this whole little slideshow that everybody decided to leak out or whatever you want to call it, what if by some chance they were like, hey, we can lay off 1,900, 2,000 people right now and change this direction, and hopefully if it pans out we don't have to lay off another 10, 15,000 people, or if you'd like we'll just keep our stuff exclusive and we'll just lay off 10, 15,000 people right now.
Arguably, that should have been said in the business update that we were told.
But we are
like
not,
arguably, if we want to say that they are the good like that they're the company that's doing these great things and they communicate with us well, that's something that they should be upfront about.
Guys, that's
Right?
blackmail.
Why?
Though. Like, that's emotional
Like,
blackmail.
Why? But why should I? Why do they need to tell me that, dude? I'm not over here with stock options. I don't need a freaking report.
I mean,
in my
I am
damn
here with
frickin'
stock
mailbox.
options. I own Microsoft.
Me too.
Same.
But I'm just,
Like, I am a shareholder.
But but let's really look at it. Like, I mean, small shareholders versus big shareholders. I'm just saying that why are we expecting Microsoft to come out and tell me everything that's happening behind the scenes, because I am so uber concerned about their bottom line, but it is completely okay for PlayStation right now to do what they're doing to Bungie and other studios that they have already closed, like the developer of Concrete Genie. And like, where's
So,
PlayStation right now to kind of inform me about, like, hey, by the way, guys, if by some chance Marathon doesn't work out, we actually plan to shutter Bungie and we are going to figure out what to do with them because they failed us.
Your assumption that my anger at Xbox's direction implies anything about how I feel about PlayStation is misplaced. For one, I think that PlayStation's making a ton of horrible mistakes. Right
but
now.
I don't see people ready to. Dude, raise your hand if you saw somebody put a PS5 in the trash can. I can't.
I'm not a person that did that though. Like the person that's on this podcast right now that's talking to you is not a person that did that.
No, I'm just saying, like, I mean, like, dude, we saw people putting up their GameStop receipts of selling Xboxes. Like, I mean, like, it is like somehow like little golden badge of honor. Like, oh, I got rid of my Xbox.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Centurion, on that. And like, I do like it is kind of funny. I mean, like people just having that sudden knee-jerk reaction, right? To
I think one could argue that people are concerned because we've seen people exit the console industry before when they move third party like Sega. So people are really concerned about what's going to happen with all of the digital shit they bought. Like, is there gonna be a new Xbox console for me to put stuff on? And so people are more hyper concerned because they may not have a literal investment in stock in Microsoft, but they have a huge investment in stuff that's hyper reliant on Microsoft doing things still.
I love how we're always wanting to compare. Okay, so I love how people like to compare Game Pass to Netflix, because Netflix actually is a completely different business model. Like, you
I didn't say anything about that, though.
No, I know. I'm just going with this thought. Is we always want to bring up Sega and Xbox. Well, did Sega have a digital storefront? Did Sega even have digital releases? Oh,
no,
that's right. They were during the generation.
We don't know that.
Games.
That's the exact point. That's the point. Right? We know what happens when someone leaves the console like business, right? But we don't know how that would impact our digital libraries. That's the concern. That's the fear. There's no examples.
But that's where you're hearing what you want to hear. That's why people just like want to get all up in arms. They just want to hear what they want to hear. But Xbox has already said that they are trying to make their games work across different platforms.
Their games, but not their third party. They can't enforce anything with third party. If a third party doesn't want their game to be licensed anywhere else besides where you purchased it, it's not going to. That's why not everything's Play Anywhere. And so, like, Microsoft's doing
But
great with
that's-
Play Anywhere, and I can play
But
my
that's
games on
where, with the
PC.
consolidation of the industry, we've seen Xbox actually make really good partners with other players in the industry, and that's where, like, really, you just, dude, money drives everything. You think for 1 second they wouldn't want these games to be on the ability for me to fire up my Samsung television and be able to play some of these games on my Samsung television?
Microsoft's not hurting by any means right now.
No,
like,
they're not. It's just like
they're
it's
doing
just
really like.
there's
But-
too many unknowns and uncertainties.
But actually, it's
We're all
pretty well
making
known how
hypotheticals here.
But
Like,
it's
even I
actually
am.
pretty well. But that's the thing. Xbox knows that there is going to be at least a few million people that are going to want to buy hardware. We know that Xbox is going all in with xCloud and game streaming, and the only way to fundamentally make game streaming work is through the development of hardware and integrating it into the Azure server blades. So that means we can take said hardware for xCloud and make a few consoles out of it that we know that a couple million, a few million, 10, 15, 20 million people will continue buying these consoles, which means that it's guaranteed revenue that you can set your watch to.
Well, so they take a loss on the consoles, though. So it's not guaranteed revenue. It's a guaranteed loss. You have to get people to spend on the store
that's
for them
what
to be
Guaranteed
profitable.
don't make the
But what-
console though.
But
Will
that's the
they?
thing, like, are you really sure
but
that
there's
it would be
guaranteed
made
they'll
at a
make them.
loss?
I
Are
mean,
we
then
really
the
sure it
price
would
would
be
go
made
up
at a loss?
tremendously.
No, actually, you just said it yourself a few weeks ago that Xbox would become a component-based console where you buy a
I didn't
base
say
console.
that. I actually don't think that's going to be true.
What, without a
I
disk drive?
never said that. Someone else said component based. That's not me.
To me, component-based means you buy your digital console. If you have physical games, you go and buy the disk drive separately.
Okay. Yes.
They're trying to develop consoles like Nintendo for a profit. Whether it's making $50 to $100 on a console, cool. But they're going to make ways of people being able to make that console work for them. If they want a damn disk drive, they have to go buy it separately, which will again create another profit margin for them because they are not going to be. I just think the days of creating consoles for a loss or a break-even point are probably going to go away.
Well, Microsoft's the only one doing it.
What?
Microsoft is the only one doing it. PlayStation
What?
does not do it. They did it for
Anymore.
the first 6 months of the PS5.
But
And that was
anymore,
it.
But that's what I mean. What used to be is no longer the status quo.
Sure.
What the game? That's where I'm just saying the game industry is evolving. Like, it's consolidating, it's evolving. And one thing I've noticed about change is people go through change kicking and screaming because it's completely different. But the point is, I have always said, as long as there's an Xbox library or an Xbox digital market for me to play my games, I'll be there. But at the same time,
I will as well.
But at the same time, the person I am, so that's where I'm not going to listen to leaks and rumors, because of the problem is when I went through what I went through in the criminal justice system, I actually had a lawyer tell me to not represent myself in the courtroom because I was going to fail. And if I believed him for 5 minutes, I would not be standing here this day actually able to say that the state of Arizona actually pled no contest against me because I had all my ducks in a row. And that's where I don't listen to leaks and rumors, because I had a college-trained, barred lawyer tell me to not attempt me to do what I did, and that I needed to spend $1,000, $1,500 for representation. When I was like, screw that. And I stand here to this day able to prove him completely wrong. And that's where in my mind, yes, it would suck knowing that my digital marketplace disappeared if that happened, but I love games, and that means it's just like going to be like, well, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Oh, well, looks like I'm going to have to go find another digital marketplace because I'm going to continue playing games.
And the thing is, Sen, too, like, Microsoft, like, and Xbox, they're usually on the forefront of things, as we were, like, kind of touching on earlier as well, and they get harped on so much by the same media that you are pointing at, right?
Well, right. And that's where it gets also kind of fun on the forefront. Microsoft, with the purchase of Activision, is now on the forefront of every government regulatory body in the world. One of the reasons why they are wanting to put games on more platforms is because they're already being accused of being a monopoly especially by people who don't even understand the word monopoly. They think they played one board game and all of a sudden they understand a monopoly. But Microsoft is obviously trying to circumvent what basically has been now kind of like, as them, everybody brings up, oh, look what they did with the Internet Explorer. They're a monopoly. So now Microsoft has to do what they have to do, because we heard from Matt Booty, they want to buy more companies. And the only way they're going to be able to get around regulators now, because they literally have a target on their forehead by every government regulator that seems to think they're a monopoly in gaming. And so they're going to basically now craft strategies and ways of being able to grow the Xbox Microsoft brand in gaming. And they have to choose strategies that are going to be unusual to us to somehow get world regulators to not have a valid argument in the courtroom. But speaking of world regulators, do we think for 5 New York seconds that world regulators would stand by and watch Xbox completely dissolve a digital marketplace? For starters, that would be a death blow to digital ownership. Like people who buy movies digitally, music digitally, like let's just say Apple and all these other markets that have the digital purchasing as part of them, it would be in their best interest to make sure that Xbox never pulls the plug, because that would completely tip the scales in people demanding that physical media comes back. And I also don't think that world regulators would allow a corporation as big as Microsoft to get away with doing something like that.
I don't think they would either. I just don't think Xbox will close it. I just think that if there's no more hardware, eventually it'll just like slowly fade out because it's not being carried forward anymore.
But you're saying like no more hardware, but we're seeing deals with Intel right now. So if we like to
Well,
break out
that's
our
a
crystal
Microsoft
balls
wide
and stuff-
deal we speculated could impact Xbox.
But no, but you actually, I love what you said about machine learning and stuff like that. We see Xbox actually on the forefront with AI. I actually love machine learning because like I said earlier, I'm a digital picture junkie. Machine learning would be awesome. Like I have seen machine learning used, like, so MGM does not want to bring Stargate SG-1 onto Blu-ray. So a company did it by using machine learning and half-ass like interpolation and all this other like sciencey stuff on basically filling in pixels. But the problem is, because they didn't have the actual film to remaster and all this other stuff, they had to use machine learning and other techniques to up-res stuff. And yeah, it doesn't look as good as Blu-ray, but it's definitely better than 480i. But speaking of Intel, we know Intel wants to use machine learning. I love how we want to talk about the hypothetical. What if by some chance Intel helps Xbox develop a chipset that can go into their partnerships with Samsung and other televisions, and
that would be cool.
And that we're not going to see console gaming as, oh, I need to go buy a game console. Now all of a sudden we have a bigger determination of what freaking television do I want to buy, because this one has the Xbox console chipset in it, and that means I'll be able to play my games.
That would be really cool. That would be really cool.
We don't know what would happen in 10 years from now, but we definitely have seen that Xbox has at least paved one path. It's not a guaranteed path, but we know that Xbox has a partnership with Samsung. We know Xbox has played around with having streaming devices, because we've all seen the little Keystone box that was floating around on Phil Spencer's shelf. We know that Microsoft is constantly trying to figure out ways to scale down their technology, and it would not shock me in the least bit 10 years from now if we saw an official Xbox partnered Samsung television on the market that would basically give me the same experience as a Series X without having to have a Series X on my shelf.
That would be really cool, and that's something I have not actually thought about.
Now, and that's the cool.
The problem with TVs is they don't normally have like the CPUs and stuff they have in them, and their cooling and stuff like that. Like you wouldn't be able to have it be thin and things like that. Like it would have to be like a wildly different kind of like how they ship the device. But that would be really cool. Well, that is a really cool hypothetical that I'm going to write about tomorrow.
We also know that TVs contain USB devices. Like actually, because technically if you have a Roku and you don't have a place to plug it in into the actual outlet, a lot of TVs actually have a USB connection for you to be able to power a USB streaming device. And it would not be totally shocking if by some chance people are like, oh, if you got physical media, that's okay too, because you can plug a USB in. You can plug your USB disk drive into the TV, and then boom, there you go. Xbox, because it's an Xbox chipset.
The complicated part of that would be the form factor and cooling. But that would be that's a really cool concept. And like that's why you bring that up, and like I actually think that is more in line with like what the technological leap is going to be. I actually don't, when she says the largest technological leap, I actually think it's going to be more about like what the technology is versus what it can do. That's why I've thought that it's going to be a handheld and a console SKU together, but like a handheld SKU, a console SKU, one that's built into a TV SKU, like that's the kind of shit I think that Sarah Bond's talking about, exactly what you're thinking of here.
And that's where, like, the funny part is when it comes to actual, like you say, cooling, let's look at the Series X and the PlayStation 5. Xbox is ahead of the curve when it comes to cooling because they obviously have the vapor chamber inside it. They've split the motherboard. They've done things that are completely out of the box when it comes to console design to be able to cool that monster. And we've seen like the first iteration of the PlayStation 5 had enough metal in it to build a transformer because they were just they were trying to simulate a vapor chamber without really creating a vapor chamber. And that's where I'm just saying, if anybody could figure out the form factor and the cooling mechanics.
Oh yeah, no.
Guys over at Microsoft.
Yeah, like I absolutely agree with that. It would just be like, it would be like something tough to tackle, right? Like it's not a straight up it can just be done. Like, but that is such a cool concept, like the console built into the TV.
Well, but look at the chip that actually made the Xbox One X, the Xbox One X. It was some guy. It was a Microsoft engineer that figured out how to make a chip all of a sudden, like a chip on steroids, and they were worried about how do we cool this thing, and then all of a sudden somebody's like vapor chamber, and then it the rest is history. Xbox took that power crown and never let it go.
Yeah. I don't know. My concerns just come from them just not addressing the uncertainty, if that makes sense. Like,
I get that, and that's where at the same time though,
I've just spent so much money. You know, I've spent so much money that like to not be concerned feels irresponsible on my part.
Oh, I've got almost 500 games in my library. Don't get me wrong, I'd be pissed, but at the same time, I mean, I've had things happen in my life that's where it's like, well, that sucks. I mean, I just feel like it would not. It would shock me that if numerous industries would allow Xbox to do something like that.
Yeah.
Just because of like, there's a lot of industries right now that hinge on digital ownership working. And and that's where like we even saw digital ownership go as far as like with NFTs when people were trying to own pictures, and that's when people were like, all right, this is getting stupid. But I just really don't feel that like it would unwind years and years and years of building consumer confidence into digital marketplaces.
I guess that it comes down to a difference in how you and I approach uncertainty. You're unfazed by it. Me, I'd rather be loud unnecessarily. I'd rather be overly concerned, loud, and continually put my point out there, so that eventually someone has to come out and address the man that's yelling too loud and being annoying, even if it's just like, even if it's just, hey, shut the fuck up, you'll be fine. Like. And I just don't think that they've done that well enough here. And so I'm going to continue to be loud until I feel that they've...
I just don't want people to become so loud and unprofessional that it makes the argument completely invalid because people are just annoyed by it at that point. So at that point, like, the argument becomes tone deaf.
Sure, and that's very fair.
Want to hear it. But also at the same time, I don't want to see Microsoft executives pull back and be like, "We don't want to talk to anybody anymore."
Sure,
because
I think that's already. I think we've sailed that boat though. That's mostly gone. I think people like Tim and the way they reacted has sailed that boat for us.
And that's the other thing too. Like, I mean. Because that's the other concern that I have, or just like, dude, what if executives decided to just be like, hey, let's see what happens if we spread some like mistruths and see who decides to like spread them everywhere. And at that point,
that's the thing that happens, by the way. That is the thing that they do.
and that's where I just kind of like, ooh, that like that's why like, dude, I'm gonna be right now. If Microsoft had enough gall to honor somebody like me with enough information to be like, yo, we're actually going to stop doing day and date on Game Pass on this date, I still don't think I would want to spread that information purely because I would have that thing in the back of my mind like, what if they told me a lie?
Right.
You know, and that's why I'm just like, oh no, I want to be the guy that at least Xbox can talk to. Not that I'm over here like
Sure.
a fanboy, but I mean, like, in my industry, I'm told stuff all the time. Like, I know things about my industry that some of the people that I buy products from have no idea. Like, I know more about like one of the people that come to mind in my industry. I buy products from this guy every single day, and I know more about what's happening behind the scenes of his own job than he does. I'm actually having to educate him on the changes his company is having because his company is not communicating anything to him at all, and he works for him. But because I know how to poke enough bears in the industry, I get people to tell me things. And that's where I just like kind of like, yo, man, like things like you're gonna be on this system within this many months and blah blah blah. And that's where I just kind of like I don't go like buck wild and start like spreading rumors and stuff.
Yeah, I think it comes down to a lot of people kind of want less flowery words and more direct answers. That's one thing Phil has always struggled with. Phil is always out there and is willing to address rumors and talk about stuff, but he always talks in such a weird, flowery, kind of unclear way where messages can be taken a couple different directions. And I really think that they need to work on that, where like they're willing to talk to us, but they need to learn how to say things clearer.
See, that's where I'm like, is Phil Spencer doing that deliberately, or is that what is being asked?
No,
of him?
I think that's how he is, because it's how he is in every interview, even when questions aren't important, right?
So, from me and Invader's experience, because we've actually had the honor of being able to interview Microsoft executives from Xbox. I've also been able to interview one of the marketing guys over at Xbox on a completely different podcast. And they even made kind of like a comment that there is somebody from the Microsoft PR team listening to our podcast at that very moment, and they're listening to every word that comes out of their mouth. And if by some chance they say one wrong thing, they're going to hear about it.
Yeah, no, and I don't think it's that Phil says things wrong, right? It's not like Phil is saying too much, and I don't think necessarily Phil needs to say more. I think he needs to be more concise in how he says things so that there isn't misinterpretation, because that's actually what the PR people would want to stop. You know what I mean? They don't want this misinterpretation out there. Right? And so like when Phil says like we don't want PlayStation or Nintendo people to think that like X, Y, and Z game is coming, they should have done a better job of actually
we're seeing the same
being more concise
taking place right now with PlayStation saying, "Oh, all our games are coming to PC and other platforms."
Exactly.
And now all of a sudden everybody wants to like misinterpret the word other platforms.
I said the same thing. I said the same thing, Sent, that PlayStation's having the same problem right now with their new COO. Same thing. You're absolutely right.
I just don't think either company is willing to set anything in stone right now. Because for everybody right now, we all, like Grimes said it right earlier, that there's a ton of volatility right now in the gaming industry as a whole. And I'm pretty sure none of these executives want to set anything in stone because they just have no idea what's going to happen probably in even the next 5 years.
I think there was some better ways for Xbox to simply just not comment on things rather than try to comment on things. Like when Tom Warren asked them, like, is there any chance for Starfield or Indiana Jones to come in the future? I legitimately think he should have said, we don't have a comment on that at this time, instead of what he said.
No, that'd be
and that's where we also get into what happened a few weeks ago is, oh my God, Xbox is not saying anything. Now the argument is they're not saying enough. Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Sometimes they can't win. That's the thing, too.
Well, and like I don't think there was a winning in this situation. right? I don't. I think that there were outcomes where it was better, right? And it based on the Xbox Wire post was almost more concise than the podcast was.
Right, yeah.
Like the one that came out after the Nintendo Direct was almost more concise. Like the pre-written one that was probably the original plan was more concise than like what the 3 executives said in the podcast. And I think that's the ultimate problem, is that they just didn't communicate well.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer that over the Nintendo approach, which is.
I also prefer
silence
that over the
until
Nintendo approach.
The last moment.
Well, Nintendo's just
They're different.
they just do things, right? They just do things, and they don't care, and they just do
well,
it.
that's where when it comes
And they'll
to
tell
like,
you, they'll straight up tell you to fuck off, right?
Right, and what Xbox did with the business update, I actually like the fact that Matt Booty, Sarah Bond, and Phil Spencer came there, and that
I
they
do
were
too.
essentially trying to talk as if I was in the room, instead of like when we in the past with Jim Ryan coming on the screen, acting like he's Bob Barker on The Price is Right, telling me about what I'm gonna love and that what I'm gonna enjoy, and I'm just like, yo, man, just because you tell me I'm gonna love and enjoy it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
I think they also just didn't like. They should have had something to say to like the long-term Xbox customers, and just to kind of did something. I don't know, because it felt like. Oh, and I think someone put it well somewhere else, that like it felt like we're not good and you're not good enough for us, and we're leaving you, kind of. But we're not leaving you. But we're like, it's like we got friend zoned almost, right? Where they're not leaving us, but
and see, that's where we bring in the idea of interpretation, because
Yeah.
for me, what I got from it was I have enough respect for you where I'm not going to continuously attack your wallet like other brands.
sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's very fair. That is a very fair take.
Yeah.
It just came off so strange.
Mm-hmm. Sent, any other comments before we move on to the outro?
No, I know this is turned into I know
It's like 12
we're going
o'clock.
3 hours. I know it's going 3 hours deep. So
Oh no, I really appreciated both of your commentary. That was like a really interesting.
I love when Set and I go back and forth. I feel like good conversations happen.
Oh no, they are no. The entire conversation, like I'm talking about, like the past 2.5, 3 hours has been very, very good, I think, personally. But okay, all right, guys. I think that about does it for this one, as we're all kind of going to sleep, at least the guys who are close to midnight. Guys, solid chat tonight surrounding the Xbox business update event. I feel like, again, we brought a sane discussion to this, as everyone has just been kind of going off in like all kinds of different directions on the matter. So I'm glad we're able to have like a very, calm, rational discussion about it. Just really wild takes the past couple of weeks. Again, a huge thanks to all of you that joined us tonight. Greatly appreciate it, as always. If you enjoyed our chat tonight, then please consider leaving a like, sharing out the show, and of course, hey, subbing to the channel. Love to have you here. Next, over to the outro, starting with Grimes. Grimes, good stuff tonight, leading us off. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, a great chat as always. You can find me on Twitter at FakeMayhemOG.
Nice. Next, I'll go on to Shockley. Eric Pal, hey, really good conversation tonight. Loved what you said as well. Where can everybody find you? Shockley? Can't hear you, pal. Maybe you went to sleep. All right, next I'll go to Dots. Dots, pal, good stuff. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, no, you can find me on Dots RTS on Twitter and on Xbox. And yeah, no, another good Sunday night. A lot to catch up on since last week, but we make do. But yeah, no, I'm looking forward to the rest of the year. I know there's a lot of good stuff coming, so once again, staying positive on this side.
No, for sure. Moving on to the General in the house, General MLD. Hey, really good stuff tonight as well. Where can all these fine people follow you at?
Yeah, you guys can find me at MLD Ghost on X, Twitter, and Gamertag Ghost MLD. Yep, good show. Looking forward to the next one.
Indeed. Next over to the Crusader. Where can everybody find you, pal?
Yeah, you can find me on all social media platforms. Crusader3456 is the username on all of them. Same with Xbox and PlayStation. Don't add me on Discord. I've always forget to say that. I remembered tonight. I don't accept unsolicited invites on Discord, but every other platform I do. Yeah, and shows like tonight almost make me want to do a if only the show name Crossfire wasn't taken and we could use it for something better. But I almost want to I would love to do like a one-on-one Crossfire with Centurion at the show. I think that would be great. I think it would be so much fun.
You see, in my head I call you guys the tag team. You know,
the tag team. I almost see us going back and forth like you know like the Tom and Jerry cartoons where
yes.
there's the good mouse and the bad mouse on the, I feel like which one of us is which changes week to week and like that's it's so fun. I feel like that would be such a fun. I actually sent you a message about it, Sent. I think you would be really good at it, Sent.
Yeah.
Hosting something like that, like a one-on-one, go back and forth. I think that would be fun.
That's actually an interesting...
I'll have to keep that in mind.
I think that would be really fun.
That's actually an interesting thought. All right, you guys definitely discuss that. That's interesting. Speaking of whom, Centurion. Hey, again, great way to end. Again, I thought you had some really awesome thoughts, discussions, especially on technology, too. Great stuff. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, great. It was a great conversation, guys. Definitely had a lot of fun listening to everybody tonight and interacting. For those interested in me and the content I make, please find me at Centurion1307 on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter, X, whatever the hell you want to call it. It'll always be Twitter to me. And you can also find me on Xbox Live. I'm always floating around there playing games. I know I'm offline a lot, but that's just because I sometimes just work way too much and just I will say it, I'm up to the wee hours of the night, so I try to avoid keeping my wife up with party chat because it gets pretty rowdy in here when we have party chats open.
No, hey, understandable. All right, and to round out the crew, you guys can find me, Invader, on YouTube at Invader Gaming. I recently put out a review for the Boomer Shooter for Gimme Father for Xbox consoles. Please check that one out. Also been doing some guides for, or starting to do some guides for RoboCop Rogue City. And, doing some bolt gun stuff as well. Got that in the mix. But yeah, guys, again, good stuff tonight. And we will see you all back here for the next one. Later, everyone.